And that was and that's another thing too that I do plan on throwing in, because well, you do mention about the characters, and I went back and I read how I read the character profiles,
Oh,
and
right.
yeah, so that's something that when you ask me about, I'll definitely tell you the differences between the two, which one I think is the
Okay.
well. I don't want to say what I'm going to say. I've
Okay.
got
Well, okay, so we're now recording, and we
okay.
will be public, and so yeah, we can get to those character profiles, and there's the bit with the typology in.
Okay.
So, Sabrina, if
Yeah.
you sort of recap what you were saying to me
Oh,
before we started recording.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely enjoyed the play. I think as I mentioned to you, I'm glad that you have decided to consider expanding this beyond the play to making it a series of videos for a whole host of reasons. One, the characters are funny, and
Thank
I
you.
think that you people will enjoy them enough to actually want to see them in more episodes, so to speak, and root for them throughout, however you decide to take the character arc. Um, looking at the way I read it 3 times, and the first time I read it just to say understand the story, to see where see what's going. I enjoyed the fact that I thought I knew where this was going. I thought I knew exactly how it was going to end, and that's not how it ended. And I always appreciate that, because there's a little part of me that kind of takes pride in knowing, and every now and then we need that little humility that lets us know you don't know everything. And so, as a matter of fact, I think it was on page 121 when I was like, oh, I actually wrote up at the top, oh, the movie, and I don't want to spoil it for people who have the movie that I thought this was going to end exactly like. And then when I get down to the end, it was like, okay, no, he flipped that on me, so which was great. I the second time that I read it, I was looking for your key points that we typically have in story structure, just to see if you have covered all of those. And I would say yes, you have. And then the third one, and also the second time, there were some parts in there that are very, I would say, lexically dense. And I wanted to hear them out loud just to get a feel for how this could be said or would be said. Because I was reading the screenplay, the play.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stage play version, you had instructions in there. And I think that the first time that I was going through, I kind of got caught up in reading those. The second time, it was like I wanted dialogue, just to, like I said, to get a feel for it. And also, too, when you have things, like I said, that are very lexically dense, hearing it is, for me, very helpful. Sometimes reading it, you can get caught up in the words, and you really aren't getting the impact of what's being said. You don't feel the emotion necessarily that is being expressed.
I've had one actress who's auditioned for Wilma, who's been I'll just say her first name is Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
That she gets all of the delivery right on the humor bits, even in both sections, where there's the one where she's like praying in Act 2, and there's bits of humor in there that destabilize the drama and could very easily have sort of like ruined things, but I couldn't help myself. I put a little destabilization in there. And then especially in that speech. And so those two were the two hardest sections to write in the play. And there was a lot of sort of like FI stuff, in the sense of placing myself in the center of the character. I think it's called the magic if. As that person in that position, not as me in that position.
Right.
And then doing the bit at the end with the speech, where I had to sort of like have a convincing theological argument that Wilma would believe, and then her being happy, I have theological cover, and then playing it in a way where she's genuinely happy that she's got theological cover. And I think in that speech, you can sort of see a ENTP hyphenness come through.
Oh,
And
definitely. Yeah.
And she says a couple of FI polar things after saying something that because if she didn't say those things, people might think, oh, come on, she's got a little bit like too much, but then she just floats to almost sort of sabotage what she's just said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you definitely see her go through her streams of consciousness, and very much like the rational, she's gonna find her reason why to justify, and that, and given that she is a spiritual rational, you have to have some sort of I don't know, conflict in there, because rationals definitely tend to lean on the
what reminded me of that is for quite a while. David Mark Kersey, he wouldn't let anyone in the rational temperament if they were religious. He wouldn't let them in. Literally in his diagnosis, no, you're not irrational. So he eventually learned that he could begrudgingly that he would let them in, because for him he thinks rational should be atheist.
Yeah, a lot of them even will question religion to a greater degree than a lot of the other temperaments. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I can remember as a child saying, I didn't like church, but I liked Sunday school because I could ask questions.
Right.
It was, I want to know why. I wanted the rational. I wanted to hear the explanations for everything, which, doesn't endear you to your Sunday school teacher, but I mean, it was who I was. It really is who I am. It's like, I do want the right to ask questions, and I do like to see a little data and proof. And like I said, just watching her go through the process, I thought, yeah, that was convincing to me as a rational female that, yeah, that would probably be how she would reconcile. I'll just put it that way. Again, I don't want to say too much about what it is, because you don't want to have too many spoilers or anything like that. It's definitely something I think that the world should be able to see in its entirety when it's released. But yeah, going back to, like I said, I read it 3 times, and then the third time that I went through, I was looking for authenticity of character, if you will. I got an opportunity to read the profiles of the characters, right, which definitely were helpful, because it gave me the kind of backstory that I'm a person who enjoys the backstory of any story. And I hear all of your story writing experts say, you have it for yourself so that you know how to write the character, but you don't want to show too much to the audience. And I definitely get that. However, I would say as a series, there's a lot of elements in your backstory that you can pull out as you share the different adventures of the characters.
Yeah. What I've been thinking about is, in fact, today I sort of came to the realization that I'm sort of like really thinking ahead in terms of, I want to make sure I have characters that have, it's like, there's a phrase like, has the character got legs? So what you learn about a character, and so I was thinking about with an ESFJ character, it's giving them sort of like extra qualities to make them as interesting rather than just being, say, the good person.
Right.
And yes, they've got these other traits. And so a lot of the traits in the stage play relate to the Rena character's health and those sort of things, and how that is integral to the plot. And then the sort of like the number of scenes that she's in. But I'm thinking that, and I think for 4 reasons, I've decided to change. It's going to be, I've changed some elements of Rena's characterization for the sitcom. One of the 4 reasons is just for ease of casting. And that is, it's very hard to find an actress that can do an Australian accent.
Gotcha.
And I thought, okay, if I change it to Cockney, then I can bring in some elements about her relationships with, say, her father, a gangster, and then and what's that like for ESFJ?
Gotcha.
To have like these connections and get these character dimensions. Have you read Story by Robert McKee?
No. Wait, story. Wait. Story by Robert. Wait, hold on. But it's so funny that you mentioned this, because I want to say that I have that on Audible. Look at this. Look at that. What's that? Is that that it?
Yes, that's it. That's
yes.
it.
Okay. Yeah, and that's for
dimensions.
Okay.
And then thinking, and that's been I'm thinking about today in cast design, is that, so for a movie where you've got all of these casts are going around one character, I mean, it really is different when you compare television to a movie. If you're thinking about,
that's true.
You just got so much time, and you need so much more characterization just to sustain. Otherwise, the audience could just get tired of a character, and it's like, and I sometimes with characters, I'll call them like a backstory character,
right?
Where once you've got the revelation out of them, okay, what's the rest to that character? And sometimes in, say, soaps, they'll keep having revelation after revelation after revelation. Right. It's like, well, they really lived a lot of stuff's happened with their backstory here. It's a little bit too much. And so, yeah. I was going to say, I'll just go through the other three things.
Okay.
So I just think if I add that about Rena with some cognitive stuff, it's easier to then bring in, say future plots with, say, some of her relatives. It gives you dimension things between, say, it's just like those kind of things interest me, like, say, a guardian member of a street gang.
Right.
It's just an interesting combination. And it's a sort of, it's, so I'll mention so McKee has he has this big thing about the character dimension being a contradiction. And he gives the example of Hamlet having loads of contradictions, more than any other character. And then he gives the example of Macbeth having a strong contradiction between his ambition and his guilt. And so he's got a contradiction within character. And so what I did is I sort of built on his idea, and I had like 4 levels: the social stroke narrative role.
Okay.
Then you got characterization, which is sort of like everything that you can attribute to like personality type. And then you've got true character, which again, personality, sort of like someone's actions, the choices they make. And then you got the unconscious. And I've been sort of doing that with a character called Laura, who's like an ENFP and has got so many different like contradictions within her.
Well, that's that type in general.
Especially with a certain kind of politics, and it causes all these defense mechanisms and things. And like sort of inconsistent behavior. And so I thought about maybe having an arc for her, but that would take a long time. And it's real an investment thing of, I don't want to be stuck for stories. I want to try and make the characters, design the characters to the best of my ability to leave me options down the road, which is why I've got a main cast of 8, which is the kind of thing that you'd have to like a dramatic series. But I just think, okay, if I got 8, because if I just had 2, you could, like some British sitcoms in the past, they've got away with 2, like Steptoe and Son, which became Sanford and Son in the United States.
In the States, okay.
But you got to have some. But I think you're going to be repeating stuff a lot if you're just having 2 characters.
Absolutely. Well, the thing about it is, if you have 4, you have the 4 temperaments. If you have 8, you have the 8 functions. So you definitely have, in terms of, or you can work with it that way, and that allows you a lot more flexibility. When you have 2, you often will have what I would say would be sort of often two functions, primary and not two functions, but two temperaments in one and two in the other, and they then tend to balance all together. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I will say about Rena that when I read the backstory, it surprised me because my first impression, had I not, because I read the backstory after reading reading it the first time, I would have initially said ESFP, mainly because of what she was doing. But then it hit me, okay, this is a 40-year-old, a woman in her 40s. So she's at that early midlife, ready to kind of make a change. And I was like, well, that actually would be appropriate. She's getting a chance to do the kinds of things that she might not have done when she was younger. It's not uncommon for people to, if you've always done things by the straight and narrow, this allows her to explore in a comfortable way some of the things that she would like to have done, because she was nowhere near as free-spirited in the true sense, at least not with her mouth, as Wilma. Yeah. And so it gives that vicarious experience. Like I said, but then, like I said, that was would have been my first impression initially. However, after I read the backstory, I was like, okay, makes perfect sense. With Wilma, she is written to the core, and she plays that to the core. I mean, just from everything that you have. And then I thought, well, this is a rational man who has written this, so he understands that rational mindset. So there's a lot, I was going to say, it's probably a lot of you in there, how the rational thinks, even though you're on that introverted side of that, you still definitely know the overall temperament, because it's who you are. So like I said, she's written. Although I've never seen you quite nearly as smart alecky as she is. You're always diplomatic.
No, yeah, she's a lot more. Wilma is sort of like fearless, and and in sort of those areas, it's the it's just like, so just trying to add something to it's like, I think I'm drying a bit. It was just that how much I want to talk. I think instead of like digressing onto the sitcom, but it's just like sticking with the I'll mention a little bit. I think I'm going to make, just for casting reasons as well, to put it bluntly, any actress who's 40 years old and hasn't made it yet, like, it's like either they're going to be young and talented and not made it, or there's going to be like very special circumstances for why someone who's 40 and good has not yet got a career in acting.
Right. Yeah.
So casting. So in other words, good 40-year-old actresses usually have an established career.
At that point, right? I see what you're saying.
At that point,
And I was saying, of course, my inner rational is thinking, well, I know there are a couple of people who became famous after 40, but it was the part as more that they were most suited for. Just trying to think. I'll stop myself right now from going down that rabbit hole. But I know there are a few, but it is so rare. You're right. They usually have started a lot sooner than starting at 40.
And I was thinking about the logistics of, well, if this is a series that's going to go a long time, then, well, if they're in their 20s, that helps to like future projects. Like if you're like doing INTJ, let's think 20 and 30 years ahead. and then also just the thing of just the logistics of, okay, I can see why Rena of her age went to the United States to do the movie, but for Rena to go to, say, England and be a housemate of Wilma, it's not as enough motivated for that to be there's not enough motivation for her to leave her family to move to England to be in a house as there was in the stage play, where it's like to go to Hollywood.
Right, got you.
Whereas that's just to be in a house, and it's like connections, and it was various things with, okay, so this is a woman in her early 40s, why is she there in this house? And other reason I thought, okay, if I make her younger, it makes casting easier. And then today I just thought, well, if we make her again Cockney rather than Australian, but not too Cockney, because again, if you've got people watching around the world, I can't be putting all the slang in and then people not knowing what a Paris is.
Right.
I'll tell you what do you think Paris is rhyming slang for?
Paris?
Paris, yeah. It's a really long one. It's really convoluted to what it rhymes for. What do you think Paris is rhyming slang for? Right, I'll work you through. I'll work you through the rhyming. So they might say boat for someone's face because it's boat race face, or syrup because it's syrup of figs wigs. But Paris is a really convoluted one. So apples and pears would be stairs, but this is Paris. Paris rhymes with Aris, Aristotle bottle, bottle and glass arse. So you got to go all the way from that long chain to get from Paris to arse.
Okay, yeah.
That is really, so it's like there's some really obscure ones. Like for instance, they might say if someone's having a laugh, they might say you're having a Turkish. Do you think how do you get from Turkish to laugh? Well, Turkish bath laugh. So there's these obscure. Okay. So if I had a character talking in like all of these
true, like authentic, okay.
Well, the question is though, there's not that many people who like talk with that level of depth of Cockney, and then you get into that issue of like where it's too much, it's unrealistic.
Gotcha.
Because so I wouldn't do all of that.
But you probably could have a couple and then make the fact that the folks around them are wondering, like, what part of it. Yeah. Well, and actually, in my mind, I'm thinking that's where footnote lady would come in. She'd be like, I got a shout out in the play. Here's my opportunity right here.
Yes, I like creating that character, and so yeah, for the so I don't think I'm going to make changes for Wilma in the sitcom. She's going to be libertarian think tank, and again, you have to think of reasons. Why is she in England? Again, like all this kind of stuff, like what happened, like, and all these sorts of things, like having reasons for them to be there. And even the idea of, okay, this is a house, you've got these 8 people in a house. Yes, technically it's 7, but we'll find out about that 8th person. But it's like, okay, how do they all fit in the house? What are the circumstances around someone having a house that big that will accommodate them all? And then I sort of work that in towards like Tell and how he inherited the house. And then I had the problem again of a similar problem I had with Rena, and that is making Guardians interesting characters.
They're usually kind of, gotcha.
Yeah, it's hard to make. And with Rena in the stage play, you've got the big thing that maintains interest is her love for Wilma.
Right.
That really, if that's really downplayed in the sitcom because of like things will develop over time, right. You need these other elements, and it's just like have the characters got enough? It's just to get enough, because the Rena character is ESFJ, and she's a good ESFJ, and so then it's like, what can I give this character to then make her interesting? It's like, yes, I mean, yes, I tried to make her funny, and there's like some things from real life, but it's like, then it's sort of like putting that character in certain situations, and then why they get into those situations, and again, family things can help there.
Yeah, I was going to say, but if you do go back and add some of the family members that are a little less than savory, so to speak, that could definitely add some elements of conflict. Because I was thinking, when you said that, the first thing I thought of was The Godfather. There's a loyalty and a nobility within that family structure, and And what's crazy is that even though we know these folks are doing bad, we still like them anyway.
Yeah.
Because they stick together. Like you can't beat that.
He talks about that. Robert McKee. He has a name for this principle. He calls it the center of good.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So basically, what he did in The Godfather is that everybody else is like corrupt around them, and they're the center of good because there's loyalty within the family.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of design, that caste design thing, and this is where you can think about intertype relations as well, where I've got an ESTP character, and he conflicts with the ENFP character, but I have to be careful not to make it. Why are they letting him live in the house? Why don't they boot him out? So you got to like do it to the right degree, where it's realistic that person could stay there and have positive traits, as well.
You know what's funny is that I'm sitting here. I'm recalling a conversation I had with my daughter some years ago, and every time I say that, oh my God, I just love him. I love him. I love him. She said, Mom, have you ever noticed you always like the same type, stuffy with a good heart? And I was like, what do you mean? She said, you always like the Guardians, always. And I was like, no, I don't. And she said, oh, you find this one funny and that one funny, but the one that you say that you love tends to be stuffy, but with a good heart. And I thought, so what you're saying, so I'm just sitting up here thinking, it's kind of that same thing. There's still something about them. They may not be the life of the party, but there's still something about them that provides that core security and is the glue to the whole group.
Yeah, it's like, so there's an ISTJ character I'm going to do for the sitcom called Tell. And,
so I'll probably be in love with him even before you've written.
I called him like Tell, which is like short for Terry, but also short for his nickname Tell-On, because he like does loads of he drones on and on and on. And he's a bit like the character of E.L. Wisty. Like Peter Cook created the character of E.L. Wisty based on a real person that he was at school with. Like he was at boarding school, and there was and he would go around talking like this and that kind of. Actually, the character Richard Iodi plays.
I was just about to say,
he's put a bit of ISTJ in his nerd.
I love Moss.
He's put a bit of ISTJ in there.
Do you know how many Moss T-shirts I own? Moss is one of the loves of my life. I mean,
I have 2 series for you with him in.
Okay.
Dark Space.
Oh, Dark Space. Oh,
that was 6 of Dark Space.
Okay.
And in fact, I'm going to show you now. Garth Marenghi's Dark Place is in that, and he plays Thornton Reed. Your arse is grass. This is in this.
Oh, is that what you will call it? Wasn't he in the IT crowd as well, or the IT crowd?
Maybe, but these are the.
Yes. Oh, there he is.
Thornton there
he goes. He played the son.
Lead character of Dean Lerner in a series where he called his interview show Man to Man with Dean Lerner, which is the follow-up, and he interviews Garth Marenghi.
Oh wait! I think I've seen a clip with that. Now that's going to bug me now. But I haven't seen this. I haven't seen this as a series though. I love Moss. I love him. I love him. So like I said, I almost wore my Moss shirt today, as a matter of fact. I have a silhouette shirt that I wear. I have
Is that character INTJ or ISTJ?
I vacillate back and forth. He has the computer knowledge, but he's such the rule follower.
Yeah.
That it is very difficult for me to say that he is an NTJ, because he doesn't buck the system in any way. He just wants everyone to follow the rules. He follows protocol. He is very concrete in how he interacts with everyone. He drones on and on, but he drones on and on the way the ISTJ does. This is the fact. This is how you do it. Da, 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 da. Versus, I've never known a true NTJ that is a 100% rule follower. They interpret the rules to their advantage. There is a difference, and they can take you through a whole rationale. But the difference is ISTJ is going to follow what was on the paper.
Yeah, I sort of
ISTJ is going to follow what's on the paper, rather.
Yeah, I think recently I sort of said in the video to sort of explain the way NTJs view. I sort of said something like NTJs are sort of neutral on rules, and the TPs will actively, by default, want to do it their own way.
Yep. I raised one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the TJs by default are the most rule following, especially ISTJ.
Oh, absolutely. They make the rules. They know the rules. They pull out their book of rules. Right. And I worked very closely with an ISTJ female for about 5 years, and I know I frustrated her with my interpretation of rules. Because to me, if they didn't lay it out clearly, I'm open to interpretation. Whereas for her, it's, well, we just need to verify it. I'm like, don't have the time for that. That's the difference.
Yeah, they might. Then you're not got any plausible deniability for doing it the way you want to do it. And so, I actually think Richard Iode himself, I get ENTP vibes from him.
I absolutely. Whenever I've watched him in interview, I agree. I laugh because there was one interview that I saw where they asked him, or they were talking about well, some people call it the IT crowd, some people call it the IT. Well, we call it the IT crowd. Anyway, they said that he said, I'm writing a show with you in mind. He said, well, how do you want me to play him? He says, just be yourself.
No, there's one where he did a book where he was being interviewed on Channel 4, which has a sort of left-leaning bias. And I think he was sort of like, and the interviewer was trying to draw him on race issues, but for him it was like the whole process of entertainment of news media was all sort of a joke, and it's that kind of like ENTP-ish relativism thing where like all these different viewpoints and not really got a dog in the race, and it's just sort of like laughing at and a lot of trolling. And I think he even published a book that was a bit of a troll against the media, and it's like, that's typical ENTP-ish, where in politics they just want to be able to win every debate from every different angle. Absolutely.
Can argue all sides of the argument at the same time. I've seen I have significant family members that do that all the time, and it's like
that's FI. That's part of FI polar.
Absolutely. But yeah, like I said, going back to the sitcom, I definitely could see definitely add a fabulous guardian ISTJ in there just for me, please.
It would be a little bit. It's going to be a bit like, it'll probably be a bit like Mossy then, because what you've described as an ISTJ, but I'm going to have him as like, I think in England, one of the things that American ISTJs don't get that British counterparts get that they don't, the opportunity to be the pub quiz champion in the hero of the pub because of pub quizzes. They like, I don't know if that's the thing in the United States, because all those concrete facts,
they know
they're the best.
Did you ever watch Cheers?
A little bit, like when I was a kid.
Okay. In Cheers, there's a character, Cliff Claiborne, I think is his last name.
Oh, Cliff, he's ISTJ, yeah.
Yes. You know what he said? If I remember correctly, in an interview, he proposed that character. He says, you know what you're missing? You're missing the bar know-it-all. And that's what he became for that show, the ISTJ. And he could come in and he would recite those facts. And they weren't necessarily like clever, new it, but it was like, he was almost always right. And he could decipher, understand. But he's the only one that I know that definitely played the ISTJ, because he wasn't clever and sort of in the, because NTs are notorious for kind of putting folks down just ever so slightly, whether they're intending it to or not. It was what it was. But that was his character, designed specifically to be the bar know-it-all.
Oh yeah, that's the thing with the ISTJ, like all those concrete facts. And so there's a sketch with Peter Cook and John Cleese in about 1989, and Peter Cook is sort of playing and he's going, did you know that? And he's like, one of the things, and he goes through all of these facts. Did you know that a whale isn't really a mammal? It's an insect. And he says, what? And he says, oh, it was a joke. And it was like, oh, it's not. But that voice, the monotonal voice
that does it, right?
I pick it up, like, and so, but I want to make him like a 6'1", and I want him to have this soft, tender side.
Right.
But when he's being very loving towards Laura, I want it in like a monotonal voice.
Right. I love you there. Yeah. Right.
But it's like being real heartfelt.
Right.
And like really pouring the emotions out. And it's like, but it's done in a monotonal way.
You're the love of my life.
Yeah. But again, if you just had that character just do that, it's like, I'm thinking, okay, that's a one-trick pony. And that's where you got to get these things where you got to have these other dimensions and all that, because I'm like really fearful of running out of stories for this. Well, plus, if I have all of this potential in the characters, then if an American production goes, oh, we'll do our version of that, and then they can do like 26 episodes a year.
Well, one other thing that I can see, have you seen the that you're doing with this? Have you seen the show? I think it's Mythic Quest on Apple TV.
No.
You need to, and let me tell you why. It's a story of a tech company that you have the resort, and they have created an interactive video game that's really, really popular. They have a YouTuber that promotes it, and like there's a real I think they call him PewDiePoo or Pewdie. Anyway, there's a real YouTuber with a similar name. Like one is PewDiePie, the real one, I think, and then you've got this kid that is like PewDiePoo. I mean, again, a play on the name that promotes the video game. But what is really cool is that you've got the main story, but then every so often they go into the video game as a sort of a side story. And I can see that with the sci-fi portion of the play, where you could have the characters be a separate entity in and of themselves. Like if they are, like whether it's a comic book, graphic novel, a video game. I mean, everything from the characters that are within the movie, which is okay, and then that movie being its own little separate entity, that having its own separate side story, if that makes sense. If you see Mythic Quest, you'll see exactly what I mean. Even if I think they show it, but that's because I also like one of the things I love the story of the characters, or I should say the premise of the sci-fi episode of it, because you've got your technology, you have the physicality, and then you also have the time travel.
Of which, what are you praising at the moment?
The Bardens.
The Bardens, right? Okay. Well,
yeah.
we'll mention a little bit.
I'm sorry. Yeah. What I was going to say, because that in and of itself is another that in and of itself is another running thing, because you developed the ideas behind those where it is its own separate little entity. Yeah, it's something that's what I mean. That in and of itself could be a thing. That could be something that you've got this. This was a movie that was supposed to star one of the characters in the play. Okay, but that in and of itself could actually be a real separate thing.
So it was originally I called the play. I originally was going to call it the setup and the sellout, where Wilma was the sellout, and but I thought it was a little bit too much, like giving the sort of like the most of the plot away, and then the setup part was. So the idea was, folks, that I had this sci-fi saga,
right? Okay.
And I thought, okay, I'll make a movie and I read Billy Murnitt's book. You might be interested in this, called something like How to Write the Romantic Comedy.
Oh gosh, no! I'm sorry, I'm not a real comic. Although I love 50 First Dates, but that's a whole other story. Okay.
But the thing is, I removed the cute meat from, which is like the key scene,
Yeah.
the obligatory scene.
Right, yeah,
But I
right.
removed it because it was too, because there's a whole sequence at the beginning where Wilma meets Ben at a Doctor Who convention, and they both get thrown out because she's berating Russell T Davies for ruining Doctor Who, and because she hates the new Doctor Who. I wonder where she got that from. And so she gets thrown out, and then but it's like, and so that's their cute meet. But that whole sequence was like 15 to 20 minutes, and it would have delayed the first act.
Yeah.
And so for reasons of shape, I had to cut it out. And it was a little bit self-indulgent as well. Like there was like a long sort of like, I mean, it might be all right in a novel where people aren't as cognizant of the shape.
Gotcha.
But all of these little things with like time and just the difference of thinking that a movie being plot driven and a television series really being character driven. Where was I going to get to? So let's give the audience something. So what were your would you like to go through the play in order? Then you can sort of like give me your notes as you go along.
Okay, well, do you want to you mean from our little
yeah if you want to go in order of
okay, well, looking at some of my favorite parts.
Yep.
Okay, some of my favorite parts. I like the humor. I love the subtle. I love the humor and the jokes where you feel like you are in on a secret. I also really enjoy, because I am familiar with typology, a lot of the type references. Because that adds it, because you've got the humor that people will get on the surface level, and then you have some of these other little things sort of layered in there for those in the know. They'll be going, right. So if someone goes back to it after learning a little bit more about typology, they'll go back to it and they're gonna see a whole different show. You know what I mean? They're gonna get some of they'll fill in some of those elements that they may not have gotten the first time. You have your corny humor in there as well. I think my favorite.
Which were the corny bits?
Well, corny. Okay, I'm wiry. I'm not. Okay, you know that was a little bit out. And I've got. There's a couple of parts in here that I have.
Yeah, but the reason I put that in is that I can imagine somebody who's like just from like his own point of view. I'm not scrawny. I'm wiry, because wiry is a more positive. Because it's like wiry is used in a positive way. About somebody who's skinny but strong.
Strong, yeah, because that's why. Because wire is made of metal, so it's I've got a little oomph to me, a little corpulence there. Yeah. Your references to your beloved Jerry Ryan in here, which is extra funny because I know you. So I was like, and you've got in here a few what I call middle school boy humor, which is funny to me as well. I don't want to say too much. Yes, as well. Then there are a few other things in there that I was like, there were a couple of spots in here. There was a Kathy Griffin reference, and where she's doing a little commercial. And actually, I actually wrote a comment in my book, and I said, kiss my butt and stop trolling me, because I felt like that was me. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
No.
Oh my gosh, yeah. She goes, the takeaway 3000.
No, Tashaway.
Yeah, Tashaway. Yeah. I was like, every woman over 25 I know has some moments like that. I said takeaway. Look at it. I wear trifocals, so please forgive me. I did.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tashaway 3000. That one. Good. There were a few references to some really high tech battery operated technology that were hilarious.
Oh, I'm glad you like them.
And actually, what I found myself going, I wonder if they make that.
Yeah, I know. I tried carefully with the names. What did I do? I'm going to put that in the pilot where Laura's like selling them on an online store, and Uncle Pierre is not happy with her being capitalist, in that manner. And
that's awesome.
and she's saying that, well, it's the only way I can, and she talks about her competition at something like Sizzling Sally's Sex Toys, something like that.
Yeah, well, like I said, some of the names that you come up with, like I said, they're hilarious. Also, some of the a couple of your superhero names. Again, like I said, there's just so many different layers of humor in there that I just find myself snickering because it's like, okay, I recognize. Oh, yeah. Oh, really?
I had to look for a lot
Mhm.
of them. A lot of the ones that I tried, I had to try to make sure they weren't already used. And
Right.
so, for example, can I actually mention the names of them, of the ones that I didn't use?
Yeah, sure. I would
You
imagine.
know the legalities,
Right. Oh,
right? So
certainly
I can say
understand.
I can say which characters are copyrighted, are trademarked.
Right. Yeah.
So Hyperman, for example, is a trademarked
Got you.
character, I believe, and so is Superwoman, a trade, because I think she's like DC trademark on that.
Gotcha.
I think it's like a sort of an evil version of Lois Lane becomes Superwoman.
Superwoman.
Yeah. And then with Power Girl, that was interesting because there was a bit of a dispute there because DC and Marvel had an informal agreement not to sort of have names that look derivative of each other.
Got
And
you.
so I think Marvel had a character called Power Man, and I think they were unhappy when DC had a character called Power Girl.
Gotcha.
Because previously, I think Marvel, because I think DC had a character and Marvel had a character that sounded a little bit similar. DC contacted them, and I think Marvel said, okay, we'll end that run. We won't have that character called that. And it's like DC didn't return the favor.
Gotcha.
With Power Girl. And so I was looking for things like, looking up names like Superlasses. And it's like things that, even if they've been done by other things,
right.
even in parody, like other sites. So I came up with names that have not been used elsewhere.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think it's great because it's kind of like, it's one of those things where it's like an open secret. We all know who this is a lot like. And I think, like I said, I enjoyed that. I think back in the movie Coming to America, there's a situation sort of like that where McDowell's has a franchise that sells hamburgers that has a symbol that kind of looks like this, but they're not the golden arches, they're the golden arcs, completely different. And so that's why I say, and which is funny, and it's a sort of an undercurrent running theme. So like I said, I think it's great. Also, those characters that you have are things that you could expand. Again, depending on how you do this, you could have, I guess what the kids call merch or expand that. You can actually turn those characters into something, again, whether it be a graphic novel, a little mini movie, or something that becomes a running theme within within the show itself.
Yeah, there's one for the I'm going to give the audience a little bit of so I'll read through the intro for the sitcom because it sort of like ties things together. Have I got it in here? So here we go. Here's the intro. Now I might mess it up, so forgive me if I do, folks. So this is going to be the intro to the sitcom, and then there's going to be a bit of Babylon 5 like music.
Okay.
That someone I know will try and do. She also plays Laura, and
Gotcha. Okay.
right. Before Wilma's timeship, before Vaseline and the Bardens, and 20 years before Wilma versus the ultimate sexy creature, Wilma lived in a house with 6, arguably 7 others. Her best friend Rena, Tamsy the Mystic, Jay the Archangel, Kerr the Computer Genius, Anna the Something, Laura the Left Winger, and Tell, who inherited the house and is a OK coder. Expect heavy foreshadowing. This sitcom is part of a much greater whole. The year is 2021. The place is number 5 Babylon Drive.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So you've got that's nerd heaven. Oh, good. Yeah. That's
Especially
good.
if it really emphasizes the Babylon Drive.
Yeah.
And it,
Yeah, that'll be fun.
So yeah, I did for an episode of the subsequent series. Do I mention it? So when did I say on there? Wilma's Timeship. I thought of an episode called Hyperlapses. No, actually it's not. No, it's called the Hyperlapses are in an episode.
With Hyperman or Hyper.
No.
Okay.
It's called Superheroics and Villainy.
Okay.
So I know that superheroes is trademarked. Is superheroics trademarked?
Wait, how is superheroes trademarked?
It is. It's a joint. Yep, I looked it up. It's a joint trademark of DC and Marvel, and it might explain why Nikki Cross in the WWE refers to herself as almost a superhero. Because, yeah, they own the joint trademark on superhero. And I think that's why she calls herself almost a superhero.
Huh.
Because she has this Capes character on the WWE. And she calls herself Nikki Ash, almost a superhero.
Almost a superhero.
I think that's
completely different. I'm almost.
I think they could just about get away with that. I think.
Wow. That's crazy. That doesn't, well.
Well, because they argued that people associate superheroes with DC and Marvel, and they were able to get the copyright on it. That's
just us. It's just us too. Well, that was pretty smart on their part, but it seems so. No,
I mean, Buck Rogers should be.
Yeah,
open by now, since it started in about 1926.
Yeah, that was my father loved. That was my father's generation. That was his superhero.
Yeah, and you got to think about in terms of like role models. You got a strong female character in 1926. Although Wilma is not named after her, and she's not named after Fred Flintstone's wife. She actually came from a character. I originally was going to do a character that was like a female version of Will Self. And so instead of calling her Will Self, I called her Wilma Others. And and then the name just stayed, the Wilma part, and some elements of the character. And then it sort of morphed into Wilma Twindley.
Now you said aren't your characters based on other people that you know though, in terms of how you wrote them? Yeah,
the Rena one was based on a real person. And I showed you her Facebook post where she went ESFJ. Yeah. Public post, folks, where she went ESFJ on someone for endangering children. Mama Grizzly mode. Doing it in public, like, disgusting, like proper ESFJ.
Yeah. Well, so going back here, with.
Yeah, and there's a certain YouTuber out there. I will not mention his name, but the ESCP character is based on a typology guy that went crazy and thinks he's an angel, and so I'm going to be reading this book. Oh, because the ESCP, that's why I call him Jay the Archangel.
Wow. Okay.
Because I want to do it believably in what he really thinks. Because part of it is like, and I'm leaving it unsure as like how much does he really think it is, and how much is he's like taking the piss, and how much is like conning people. And in the first episode, he'll have a conversation with his dad, and his dad's concerned because his dad, I call him Ed. It's just ESTP dad, and he's like a mature version of ESTP, and he wants to know. He wants to be relieved that he wants to know if his son's just pulling a fast one. It's just, and I'll set stuff up later on. Yeah. Oh, I had a sketch where I might do the sketch where I'll go into that in the future. So,
I was gonna say, well,
any other favorite? What did you think of INTJ News?
INT. Oh, I actually wrote that down. I thought that I actually had a comment on that. Yeah, because I thought that was good. Because there were a couple of things that you did along that line. We here at INTJ News. Yeah.
Yeah. Think her performance sucks. Big hairy old man.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what I wrote. Well, I have to tell you what I wrote. I wrote on that is that sounds exactly like something I have said on more than one occasion, like literally those words. And I was like, is there a book out there that we're telling on ourselves? But yeah, well, what was funny about that scene was that they were trying to get her to say what she really thought, and she in turn flipped the script on them, and he just went, and they just went with it. In that scene that you're referring to about the INTJ News, it's like, well, what do you think about such a? Well, what do you think?
Oh, and yeah, because she can't, no, for legal reasons, she can't say.
Right.
She can't say what she
can't say exactly what
she truly thinks, because she'd get in trouble. So if I show people this should. Oh, that's not right. Stop screen. I'm going to show you the. I'm going to show the. This is the bit from the second edition. So I got to make changes. So the bit with the where's it? Hyper. Is there a find? Oh, it's probably a special tool. All right, wait. View mode, single page. Do that. View, not facing. Fit width. So there's a bit where it discusses. So what page was it on? Let's have a look. The stuff with the hyperlapses, and I wrote it down on this. Where did I put about the where they changed it? Right, where you've got power person. Okay, page 25. Page 25. Footnote lady. There you go. If you want to read through that, so this is the new version of it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Footnote. Some call me Indulgence, but I prefer Footnote. This geek is much better than what I'm used to, which is being squashed in a book and hardly ever seeing the light of day or reading lamp. In the next scene, Rena is wearing a power person costume. Here's some filler, correcting herself, info on this curvy crusader. It's a power person.
I think I removed Caped Crusader because that's trademarked. Caped Crusader is trademarked.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Huh. This curvy crusader. Power person is Hyperblook's cousin. And she's also bustier and better Earth B, i.e. parallel universe, grown-up version of the Earth A, Hyperlapse. That's the rationale the comic book artist used when he drew PP with bigger cups.
But really, though, in real life, the real-life equivalent of this, the trademarked equivalent of this is that Amanda Connor she said that when she drew Power Girl. When they did the line of in like 2010, 2012 with her husband, it was like Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray, maybe. There's some good. They're funny. There's some good stuff in there. But she's Amanda Connor's very good with facial expressions.
Yeah. And I like the Footnote lady. Well, actually, I like both you got Volos, voiceover lady. Because I do enjoy to a certain extent the breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do enjoy that. But there's and footnotes are unsung. The unsung heroes of the book. That's kind of what I liked about it, because she's kind of a little bit of humor on the fact that I'm a footnote. Nobody, and then I've tried to imagine, because you describe her as a big old sunburst asterisk.
Yeah.
And I guess she would be wearing black from the neck down. So that we can.
Yeah. So it just looks like on the stage, it would be like this, like talking. It's just like, imagine sort of like the man in the moon, or the woman in the moon, where they had like, I think it was like in the 1920s. It was sort of like, and they had the thing where it was like a face in there, and they had like the ship had landed in one of the eyes at the, but just like the idea of like that, just this talking
kind of that look.
white asterisk star thing.
But
I added that. I added some new stuff here. Yes, this is significantly different.
Yeah, definitely. Look at this. Look at this costume of power persons. Look at the plastic boots, the yellow fetishist mask. You know, it's funny. I started thinking of Benny and the Jets when I read, because you had something like that in the first one. You know, she had electric boots.
So the costume is very much different from the trademarked.
Yeah. Did you, just a side question, how you were able to go through this piece by piece and then sort of look those? You did this originally in what, 2009 time frame, you said?
Well, I started it in 2009 and then I finished it in about 2015.
2015. Okay.
And then it got sort of like published about 2016.
Now, one of the things is I'm looking at this, thinking about the characters, and I know this is kind of taking on a sidetrack. Did you make many changes based on the technology of the time? Because I'm sitting up here thinking, I'm looking at this, it made me think technology. And that was one of the things that I thought about. I was like, you know, you mentioned a BlackBerry and you mentioned unlimited, you know, you mentioned text messaging being expensive. And I was thinking today's kids, the younger folks, don't even know what it's like to not have an unlimited plan.
Yeah, I mean, because that was something that happened in real life.
Yeah.
With the text messages at the time.
Yeah.
From, say,
From
Australia to, it was like $1 a text or something.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, nowadays kids would have something like WhatsApp, and it would go over like it would go over their internet as opposed to the SMS. So anyway, like I said, seeing this just made me think to that, because I didn't want to forget to say that, was that I wonder how that technology, but if you start it 20 years prior and it's known that it's taking place, then we would definitely see sort of the gradual change. But certain things would need to be mentioned just to put them in context for an audience that doesn't get it. Because like I said, I think about that. You know, my kids are 9 years apart, or 9 school years. They technically like 8.5 years apart. And my daughter remembers dial-up. My son hears about it in the mythology of the internet. You know, that's you know, so I just think that. So, but anyways, back to this. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. So like I said, I had to change the timeline a bit with, and also because the stage play is meta, and what we're watching is, well, not what we think we're watching initially, although there's enough clues as we go along that explains the ending, and so I've worked it so that any of the sort of like the follow-up projects would be consistent with the sitcom. And if people complain about the inconsistencies, I'm just going to have to say, deal with it. It's the realities of like when stuff was done and various changes I had to make. And like I said, like the time that it was written with the technology, and the technology is different here. And I've had to come up with reasons why. So for instance, when I say 20 years before Wilma versus the Ultimate Sexy Creature, that after that, that story, there can't be any more Wilmas Housemates after that.
Right, that makes sense.
Because of what happens in that movie and how it all spins everything off, and then but depending on how many episodes, say I was able to make the movie of, like, do the graphic novel of Wilma versus the Ultimate Sexy Creature, and if I was able to do as a movie, and if I'm not able to do it, then I've got 20 years to play with. If I can only do the sitcom, which is still a huge success, like you've got 20 years worth of material. But if you get to a point where, oh, in 5 years' time, we're doing the movie. And it's like, but I've made this big thing about, oh, it's 20 years in the future.
In the future. Gotcha.
Then there's certain things about aging and certain things and de-aging and all that, but that's all been thought about in order to make the timeline work up. So, so by the time when so depending on who's around, because I don't want to say that, like, right. I'm not like George R.R. Martin, like killing characters off. Like I'm loath to kill a character off, but putting this much effort in, I don't really want to. Whereas here, it's like off with your head.
Yeah.
So that has been worked out, but again, it's like starting small, and so and with the Bardens, what I thought of doing is that if the stage play were novelized, there would be some chapters of the Barden Supreme Protector reading through Wilma's script.
Oh, okay.
And she's like angry that Wilma has done a parody version of the Bardens.
Gotcha.
And also wanting to know, where did she get this information from?
How does she know?
How does she know? And then that ties in with that opening scene with Wilma where she's like asleep and you can hear these voices and saying, oh, we're unable to regain control of her and all of this sort of stuff. And so that then enables me, though, to do a slightly spoofy version of, like, and I don't know then, if I was doing this, I don't know how I would release the stuff about the Bardens and how much to keep that, like, maybe for a separate project. Because it's like someone released, oh, that's a really good idea, we'll do our own version, like slightly change it up and get around legal action and all of that. So that might be delayed. Again, that could be done for a computer game spin-off project. So definitely in the sitcom, the Rena character is going to be in her 20s. She's not going to have children. She's probably changing from Australian to Cockney, but again, it's still the same, roughly the same character on the inside. It's just that Cockney background will give her extra dynamics and bring out different dimensions.
Gives you some probably more flexibility.
It's like if you had, it's like there's something called like because Robert McKee was banging on about he said that like someone's environment can be part of their characterization. I put it as a different level. And so you can always have these you can have a boring character and you put them in an absurd, like with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Arthur Dent's like this boring, like hard zero, not much characterization at all. And it's like he's just sort of done as the fish out of water. And if you would have put, and he said something like a boring character, a boring run-of-the-mill ordinary character in extraordinary circumstances, that creates interest in that character. And I would say that that's, you can almost say that that's a dimension between the social narrative role and the character. And like I said, it's like when you have, in fiction, when you have the character that does their predisposed role enactment, is not as interesting as atypical predisposed role. So for instance, if you've got an ESTJ playing a prison guard, then that's what the character and the role meld together so much the audience won't even see the character. But what they had a show in Britain called Porridge.
Porridge, I remember that. Yeah, with the rum. Yeah.
So they had an ESTJ prison guard called Mackay, and it's like the role is the same as the characterization, and it's like, well, so an audience would say, oh, that's just a typical prison guard type, but they had this other one where you had a dimension between characterization and role, because they had this liberal prison guard who was all about reform. And so there you go.
We're going to love them, and we're going to rehabilitate them, and it will be wonderful. Yeah,
it's all about that. And so atypical role enactment, it's like, so if you like, then I think it's more interesting if you can sort of get people in atypical roles. And so it's like getting the Guardians in interesting situations. And you can do it like with certain quirks, but it's just maybe I'm sort of coming at it from a little bit more of a dramatic point of view as well, in that rather than relying on humor, because part of me thinks that it won't come, that the humor won't come, whereas you can get to drama intellectually, but with the humor, a lot of it is you just relying on it just appearing in your mind. And I fear that, you know, they might just go, and there's no more, because it is like that. It's like Woody Allen said, like, when he laughs, he's like hearing the joke for the first time. And it's like the characters say the lines. It's like, and I think you've sort of like said that you've read something similar, that like when you really, really, really know the character, the character can write itself.
That's true. That's true. It makes a difference, because you're not overthinking how will this character think. You know who they are, you know, and then you're not having to, I don't know, reach out or expend energy trying to figure it out. It's significantly more intuitive. You know, and because, I mean, it's just like, I was going to say, that's just like anything when it comes to learning in general. You know, the first few times that we try to walk, you know, we actually try to sit up before we walk, and then we toddle, you know, and then we toddle and fall. And so essentially knowing the character is like just knowing how to walk, and then I can interact with the world, you know, on my own terms.
So let's get some structure.
All righty, there we go.
So
that's it.
So what about the characterizations?
Okay, characterizations. When as in terms of authenticity, I would say that, because the way that you've written it, Wilma is spot on. With Rena, I definitely had to, like I said, because in my mind, reading her, I thought artisan. Went back to your character synopsis, and then I was like, well, you know what? I ignored the fact that this woman was 40. I was looking at her being Wilma's age, and at that point in her life, it makes so much sense that she is going to enjoy.
I'll just say about something about the real woman that I based her on. I think there's a subtype of ESFJ. I think there's a creative subtype of ESFJ that can look a little bit ENFP-ish, and it might be the one like that might be like extra tertiary NE. And the thing is, their beneficiary shift is towards ENFP.
Gotcha.
So it's like their tertiary and then their lead function. It goes NE-FE, and they're the two strongest functions in ENFP from a certain point of view.
Gotcha.
Because I would argue that a lot of times FI is stronger than. So for instance, socionics would say that. Here's an example. Socionics would say that a brief typology interlude. Socionics would say that TI is Sabrina's second strongest function. Dario Nardi in the research would say TE is Sabrina's second strongest function. And I think you can make an argument for TI by saying, well, it's an introverted function. She's doing a lot of introverting. Therefore, most of her thinking should be colored by introverting, because she's
Mm-hmm.
introverting a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that valued thing in that your thinking is going to be directed towards what you value, and what you valued is extroverted thinking, and so you're going to be thinking about extroverted thinking kinds of things, and therefore use that function, even though it's further away from introverting than TI. And so that valued thing really does like change. It's like an extra factor, because but the idea of the default club functions, I do sort of go with that, in that if someone's an NT, if someone's a rational and they're an introvert, you know, deductively you're going to be thinking, like, from those two premises, this person's an NT and they're using their NT functions and they're introverting, therefore they've got to be using their introverting NT functions a lot. Just because it's just the way it works. But that other factor, the valued unvalued, throws a spanner into the works. And then you got the Enneagram factor as well that can.
Well, like I said, it was, you know, it was probably just a little bit of bias on my part, mainly because of the type of part she played. If she would have been playing in a play where she was the mom or something a little bit more guardian like, then I wouldn't have even thought about it. But I was imagining her in her garb, and I was like, yeah, that's an artisan, especially because to me, the character in my mind that she's playing would be more of an artisan, you know, just more of the, you know, She-Ra, you know.
Yeah.
That's like I said, that's where that came from. But when I look at the authenticity of the character of Wilma as a Southerner, she definitely plays what we would probably say would be that Texan. Because the one thing I will say, that when you're looking at folks in the South, in the United States, the folks on the Eastern Seaboard that fall in the South are definitely, I would say, a little bit more genteel than the folks that are in the Midwest, and that is west of the Mississippi, but sort of in the middle of the country. I mean, and so I think she nails that. She's, you know, I guess they're just a little bit more badass. We're a little bit, you know, we're here, those of us in Georgia, we're just, like I said, just a little bit more genteel. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the character Reba from the show. She did a show. Reba McEntire has a show. Now, Reba herself is from Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is just over, you know, just north of Texas. That kind of character is probably more in line with that Midwestern person who's also got the, you know, the Southern values. Whereas if you look at a show like Designing Women, which takes place in Atlanta, you definitely see the more guardian-like behavior or essence of the Georgia Southerner, or somebody that's, like I said, from the Southeast. Now, Florida, it's its own little entity. Florida is just kind of you have so many people from all over the country that move, especially at retirement down to Florida, that they're an amalgam of everybody. So I won't say Florida's not the South. It's just not nearly as Southern as Georgia in my mind. But,
also because you got a lot of people moving there out of state. Especially from the New York,
right? The little snow bunnies, because
the New York Jewish population.
Going down there. It's warmer, and so, you know, the temperature down there is pretty. You know, it's pretty much, you know, you go from warm to hot, and sometimes cool. And so when folks retire, they love to come down there because it's nice. Now, mind you, there's two types of Floridians. You have your palm tree Floridians, which are, you know, Miami, Dade. That's a whole different. Now, your pine tree Floridians, those are sort of in the north part of Florida. They're a lot more what you would consider to be traditionally Southern.
And they also say, like, the panhandle part.
The panhandle, those are your pine tree folks.
Yeah.
And your pine tree and palm tree. That's kind of how I differ. Those, you know, that's the difference between those that go hunting and those that go fishing. There's definitely a difference. But yeah, I think she's done a good job of portraying the character. Now, you based her off of a popular political character at the time. Now, have you kept her in that realm?
Oh, no. Wilma was.
Well, no, I mean,
Wilma had a thing.
A thing for her. When I said based her, but she had a.
But that particular character I see as ESFJ. I see Sarah Palin. I see Sarah Palin as ESFJ, and I see her in sort of inferior TI
Mm-hmm.
in like when she gets like, and to be honest, Megan Lavota had a moment like that in her video with Linda Berens.
Oh, okay.
Whereas like going through the lots of convoluted expressions and sort of getting there in the end in an articulate way. But that's sort of like Megan's style, where she will explore the issue completely in depth and have like a one solid theme and explore it in depth. But what happened with Sarah Palin, for some context, is that day that she had a bad interview, on the same day she was bidding farewell to her son that was going to Iraq on the same day, and then she came back strong in the debate against Joe Biden when she had like a really weak hand to play. And there's a book that talked about, they basically decided that she would just do it in her own way, the debate. And so when you've got a debate from the position where it's like they're not the positions that you agree with, and so she ended up drawing the debate with Joe Biden. So I sort of put that in there into Wilma. Gotcha. And there's like a little bit of comedy reasons in there as well, but I also just see the ESFJ in Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
Like with logistics, like there was a DVD out. In fact, Steve Buchanan did a documentary on Sarah Palin.
Oh, okay.
This is before Trump, called The Undefeated. And he talks about all the things like she did, like as a mayor and a city manager, and all the corruption busting that she did. And you could sort of see all of the logistical things that she was good at. So that part of that, and I remember I was involved with, I was having lots of I was on Twitter a lot with the Tea Party people in around 2010, 2011. And so a lot of that got into that ethos. And it's like Trump just drove out the Tea Party people. The Tea Party doesn't exist anymore. It's like two people left. It's like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. That's it.
Gotcha.
Right. And so there's like all of this sort of like world that I was sort of like in, and sort of that stuff made its way into Wilma with those details about the Tea Party and the constitutionalism and the Federalist Papers. And because I was like listening to Peter Schiff since like 2009, and there's a joke there that Wilma Rena goes, a non-stop Peter bleeding Schiff.
Well, and then she mentions, she said she talks about people and they haven't even read paper, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, okay. That's
right.
Yeah.
It's true, though. It's like he's like, it's like he has a hissy fit, James Madison Jr., and he's banging off about saying, people are accusing me of the general welfare clause means that we can do anything we like. And he's saying, well, why do we then list these powers afterwards? And plus, all your state constitutions have the same clause in there. And so he goes, he's irate about the fact that the general welfare clause doesn't mean that we can do exactly what we want. So it's right there. The father of the Constitution tells you exactly that the general welfare clause is just an introductory preamble to the 17 or 18 defined powers that follow.
Gotcha.
And then Peter Schiff says there's a thing called the Elliott debates that I've never looked into, but it's in the and he also talks about the pestilent effects of paper money as well, because they didn't want to, and so that was absolutely clear that they did not want paper money in the United States, and that only gold and silver, because they lived through hyperinflation during the Revolutionary War.
Gotcha.
Right. There's actually a bit in the Constitution that says no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts.
Wow.
And they can't issue bills of credit, which is what they used to call paper money, bills of credit.
Paper money. Wow.
Yeah. Right, but all that gets ignored. Anyway, so all of that sort of like interest in that sort of filters its way into Wilma. So it's like say the tip of an iceberg kind of thing. But the bit I was going to say about when I did the Kersey temperament sorter with the real Rena, and I was surprised when she came out as ESFJ. I didn't know as much about temperament at the time, but what you get in the profile, there's a lot of the real Rena in that profile. Okay. And I will say that yes, based on her actions in the story, there's not a lot of say tells of say the Kersey temperament, but there is, I would say, from a functional point of view, you would see some FE stuff going on with Rena. Yeah.
Well, like I said, when you look at the fact that she is 40 in this, it makes sense because I think one of the things that that tends to happen is we will lock people into a type that we know that we see, in that young adulthood toward middle adulthood, and then forget that midlife adds another psychosocial crisis.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have to, and that's when, to a large extent, we revisit those underdeveloped areas, and I mean, we do that in our personal life. We do that, psychologically, and then, you start realizing, time is going by, I'm no longer 25. What are the things that I wanted to do with my life? And so a lot of things go on. Like I said, again, it makes perfect sense. But I do think that the way that she's built, that in a sitcom, you will have nuggets of gold that you can pull out, because I could, as she develops. And the other thing with sitcoms is you have the character arc within the story for that one story. If and not everybody has to go through one, but by the time you've done a full series, your main characters will have gone through several different changes, and they will hopefully be better off in some way toward the end of it. And I would imagine,
that how much you change the characters, and like there's some sci-fi ones where I'm gonna have to hit a reset switch because of like characters not knowing certain stuff that's from the future. And he even make in one line, I have like time to hit the reset switch because it's stuff that would like mess it up in terms of the future, but it will enable me to like set up stuff in the future and like sort of like appearances of future characters in the past via various routes of because the pilot is called the Psychic Fault Line, and this is where this is where the character of Tamsi comes in, and I've based her on a combination of Shalina and Tamsi.
I love Tamsi.
Yeah,
Shalina. I haven't talked with Shalina in a while. We've talked on Discord before. Yeah, but
proper INFJ, proper legit, real deal INFJs.
Yeah.
Although Shalina changes between, but she stays within the quadra. But she legitimately changes types within that quadra. Within that group.
Yeah. Have you? This, for lack of a better comparison, have you seen the show This Is Us?
No.
If you have an opportunity to watch a couple of episodes, I would say watch it, because one of the things that they do is they go through timelines. And so you will see them as little kids, as teenagers, and as young adults, and then as adults, as they are in present time. And they integrate backstory here and there. And I'm thinking as you're talking, that may be one thing that I'm not sure how they plan it, but if you were to be able to do it sort of like that, it allows you to jump around and tell several stories.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already sort of like, there's a bit of, because again, certain things from the future are going to make appearances in the past.
Okay, right.
On
That
a
makes sense.
zero budget. So this is like
Got you.
science fiction, literally zero
No budget. Got
budget.
you.
No one's being paid. So
Got you.
this is zero.
Zero. I
So
got
it's
you.
like the only we might have to call in some favors, like in established connections, but in order to do something in the 5th episode called the Sci-Fi Convention, where that also could be shot around, and if there's no money to do it, and it's like I'm going to put up here's a picture. It's like here's a drawing of what the costume should look like by the right, and then they have to be done like that, and then I mean, my hope is that it would become a proper series, and then we could do bits, and then the funding to do these little bits. But it can be. I'm thinking of doing it on like zero budget. I'm even thinking of things like I don't want people traveling like 200 miles to do something where they're not going to get paid.
Right.
They're not going to get their expenses. It's like and also there's certain characters that can do their parts remotely because they're just appear in video calls.
Are you connected with any universities or any schools that are?
I have some connections that I don't like. I can mention that off camera.
Yeah, right. Well, and I guess what I meant is that I could certainly see that being a great way for. Because I think when you think about some of the folks that have done that.
I'll just say I have a director who's got connections.
Good. That's good. That's good.
Right. Yeah, and we're going to do the thing where we're going to alternate our visions for the episodes, where sort of like it'll be sort of like my vision on the 1st, 5th, and 6th episodes, and then Francisca will do the other 3. And so it's like she'll have like the veto on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and then I have the veto. So that way, there's not going to be any sort of conflict on. But we're both from the same point of view in terms of we're both big time into storyboarding.
Gotcha.
Stuff because we both go off the same book, like film directing shot by Cats. So, and that book's quite good as well. I think there's an endorsement for your state.
Film directing
for your state. Is it Savannah College of Art and Design?
Yep, that's just north of me.
Yeah. So that seems quite a good. Some little bits in there about I didn't know about this. They've got like a 30-degree rule in there. I didn't know about that before. I knew about the 180-degree rule.
What's the 30-degree rule?
I don't know. I've only just glanced through it because I was taking some photos for Francisca from the book.
What's the 180-degree rule?
Well, the 180-degree rule is that if you are doing a conversation and you like shoot somebody looking this way, and then if you suddenly put the camera on the other side, then it'll switch around. It looks like they're looking into the back of their head. Oh, so you got to stay like so. Say this is the my board is sort of like all used up for tomorrow, so I can't use it. But so say that's the middle of a scene, and you've got 2 people talking here. Then you've got to have the camera sort of like there and there. And if you set the camera there for one person, and then there, and it's like you'll see their head sort of looking that way, and their head sort of looking that way. But if then you then had the camera there, then their head is suddenly looking at another direction, and it's like it looks like they're looking into the back of the head of the other person.
Gotcha. So you've got to
keep it on one side.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Now I imagine now for humor, I reckon it could be broken in a creative way.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like you go the other side and suddenly do a reveal to like if you want to freak the audience out. So I reckon a little camera trick could be done, like suddenly go to the other side. So something could be done for humor. Yeah, for humor. So I'll be thinking about that. So what about the characters outside of the big 2?
The characters Ben's hilarious. Ben. I don't know who that is modeled after. Ben Ben is the horny teenage brother we all have. He's funny. He's funny. It's what's funny is like when I'm looking up here, was it were you surprised? I think probably some of Ben's humor and what goes on in his mind surprised me because the Ben that I know that's connected to this, I see as like a college professor. I that's always talking about, intellectual things and knows all of these wonderful things about literature and movies and temperament. And then it's like, what do you mean you think like that? You naughty boy. Ooh.
I had to indulge my low side. Go where the humor is.
Yeah, but what I love, one of the things that I like about the ending is that you indulge that humor in a creative way, and I think that's part of what makes the meta elements of this fun, is that you definitely, I like the ending the way that you did it. I don't want to say too much. Right. I don't want to say too much on camera, but part of it is that there's a little bit of tongue in cheek. It's like, yeah. You know what I mean? Let me, yeah.
Yeah, go on. If you want to, sorry for interrupting. I was just, do you have something to finish off with?
For me?
I thought I'd interrupted your point.
Oh, no. What it is that I was stopping myself from saying what I wanted, because one of the things that I don't want to do is give away too much. But right. I guess, like I said, what I like about that is that you have these humorous elements that are added in through the character of Ben. But Ben doesn't take himself so seriously. He has, right. You know what I mean? It's like even right to the very end. I'll tell you exactly what I think off camera, because again, right. I don't want to spoil the ending.
So part of the place of the meta fiction was sort of coming from a place of, it wasn't so much coming from a place of, oh, I'm going to do this because it's meta. Mm-hmm. It sort of gets there by being sort of very existentialist and having the characters be very self-reflexive and self-aware, and so it comes from that point of view. And so because it's so like
they drove that.
I've got a tension within me between all the psychological stuff and the stuff that wants psychological realism, mm-hmm. and then there's that part of me that is like the cheeky schoolboy that wants to sort of like take the piss mm-hmm. at a moment that destabilizes. So when mm-hmm. Wilma's having a really like solemn moment praying, and mm-hmm. and I'll put in mean ping pong backhand, mm-hmm. and there's other things, and in the acceptance speech mm-hmm. towards the end, that the little things that get put in, and it's like, but if the character, the kind of thing that an ENTP would tangent in the middle of a very mm-hmm. important speech,
right,
and like be self-aware because of it. But and so it's something that is, it's like the glue that's holding together mm-hmm. the meta bits. Mm-hmm. I believe is the psychology of the characters.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So as you develop them, well, as the way that they're developed, this is how they would. Yeah, you could see them acting or coming
especially
to
Wilma,
this. Yeah,
without any like tangents, and then getting back on topic.
Yeah. Goodness. I know. So I have so many Dom friends. It's not even funny. And I was thinking, well, there's a meme that you see on Facebook and it says something like, this is me telling a story and it looks like a Rubik's Cube or it looks like a maze. And eventually it gets there. And I was like, yeah. And I usually tag folks. So it's like, this is us. Because typically I can go, well, I make a few little moves here, but when I'm in that, I just go with it. That's why sometimes I have to say, okay, I need to put some structure, because it is easy to go down.
So I can say something to the audience about, there's a thing, I came up with a term a while ago mm-hmm. called something that I sometimes aim for, but I don't really do it now, but at the time. Meta ultra realism. And this is the thing where not ultra meta realism, not like extreme meta realism, but like meta ultra realism, where, so for example, the closest example, the 2 or 3 examples I can sort of get towards it would be like if somebody were to point out in a science fiction series, if someone was to say, hey, how does your universal translator make them speak in English? And it would say, well, but their lips are moving in English. If someone actually pointed that out in a science fiction show, and it was, their lips are moving in English, these aliens are like, that would like, in that moment, it breaks the 4th wall.
Right.
So that would be the meta part. But then if you can come up with an answer for that, you've then reunfolded it and you've made it more real than what it was before, because you've added an extra reason. So it's like, it would be like coming up with clever solutions for holes in the genre, and but so it's like it's like a thing of like you're reunfolding it in more logic. Now you could have a philosophical point where, well, you've just made something that obviously isn't real, and so maybe you're critiquing logic by saying that you can use logic to make something real that isn't, and the audience can see like almost like the magic of logic for making something real that seconds before it was just pointed out this isn't real, and then it's like, oh, but this reason can then make it real. But I can give it.
Well, I was going to say, it almost sounds like a thing I've read somewhere. They call it the Scooby-Doo effect. Have you Scooby-Doo? You know, have you ever watched Scooby-Doo?
I watched it as a kid.
Okay. Scooby-Doo, there's this surreal, there's always some little boogeyman or some sort of character that's done something wrong, and then what is it that they prove? They, you know, we know who does it, but there's always a logical reason that they bring you back to it, so that you can accept the scary and then accept the and paranormal along with the normal. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. As long as it's got like an internally consistent world, and people sort of like act sanely within. It's like if you did a computer game version of it, and it's like, what could these characters do in this position? Because I had a lot of that when I was like reviewing Blake 7. I heartily suggest Blake 7 to you.
Oh, I know, yeah.
And Yes, Minister. That's probably the most intelligent sitcom ever. Especially politically. And so like, and at the artisans, Jeff and his son Morgan sort of like saying that, hey, why don't they just kill her? Why don't they just, it's like they want to take the expedient action, and it's like these things, and so that frustrates them. But they really liked it when there was a character with a smart villain, like an artisan type of villain in Countdown. But and there was one episode where I loved, they hated it. I loved the weapon in Weapon. I love the idea of IMIPAC, which is Induced Molecular Instability Projector and Key. And the idea is that you can shoot somebody with this gun, and then you can kill them anytime you like by turning the button. And so it means that you could get away with any murder because you could just shoot them with it. And then later on, when you got an alibi, just flip the switch. And they're dead. And there's like all these things like you could have, and you could keep people millions of miles away because because the gun creates a molecular instability in somebody, and then later on, remotely you can press a button and it kills them.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was a cool weapon. Not that it was giving me any ideas, but I thought it was a cool. But J. Marcus Straczynski did something similar. He had a similar kind and an analogous kind of gun in Babylon 5 Crusade. Now, he was a huge fan of Blake 7, was J. Marcus Straczynski. And there's a character in Babylon 5 Crusaders a little bit like Kurt Avon. Oh, and that's what I'm going to call, there's going to be a character in the sitcom called Kerr Stratford. Stratford upon Avon.
Okay.
Curtis Stratford. Kerr Stratford. There's going to be a little bit of Avon in him, but he's not going to be as dark. So Avon is like so INTJ. He actually had that line.
Right.
So they said to him, this will benefit the audience because you've probably heard this before. Have you ever cared about anyone, Avon? How can you leave at a time like this? Have you ever cared for anybody? And he says, I've never understood why it should be necessary to become irrational in order to prove that you care.
Amen.
No, indeed. Why it should be necessary to prove it at all.
Yep.
And I thought, that is so effing polar.
Yeah, but it's so true. It's like, yeah. I think we've had that discussion before. I've never understood. It's like, and it's, I understand the importance of emotional appeals at times, and it's important to know, but it's hard not to feel manipulated. It's hard not to, I just find myself just distrusting it as my first go-to, but that's a whole.
It's like ESFJ that they're so dependent on other people's affect display to know that they're doing okay.
Yes.
I once saw Elena Ames. She was being interviewed and being funny, and the interviewer wasn't responding to her. And she looked like she was dying. She looked like a comedian dying on stage because they're so other focused. They're so result dependent on the other person. Whereas somebody like Jeff would be like, he would just, even if the interviewer wasn't laughing, he would like just go through the jokes and amuse himself and not be dependent on it, because he'd probably think about, oh, there's an audience out there that would get it.
Well, and and I definitely find myself frustrated with that kind of thing too, because you're familiar with Paul Ekman and facial action coding system.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to that, but one of the dangers in all of that is you assume I think it's dangerous to assume that every emotion, that every muscle on my face has something to do with you. Oh, you can be, and NTs in particular, we can be so preoccupied with 1,001 things, and that have nothing to do with actually what's going on in the present. That I just don't like the idea of judging people based on that.
So for instance, someone could say something that's not disgusting, but it reminds you of something that's disgusting.
Yes.
And then you react to what you've just recalled in their mind, and they think that you've just reacted to the initial stimulus as disgusting.
Absolutely. And it's like, no, I promise. Yep. And that's a scary premise. It's one thing to react if you sense genuine danger and you need to move and get out of the way because of something that you see. It is a whole other thing to assume that because somebody does like that, that they smell something that stinks. That could be a reaction to an allergen. And this, there's just too many
context.
Yeah, exactly.
The people need to learn and from an NLP point of view, it's like, if they know somebody, and it's for a while, for a long time, I was unhappy with their use of the word calibration because I was like looking at it literally, and I was like, okay, what is the thing that's being measured against? And what it is, the actual thing that someone's behavior is calibrated against is the whole history of their behavior that the person has. So, for instance, if you know somebody intimately, when they do a particular thing that it indicates a certain thing, exactly, because you've got all that history
exactly
behind it, and that's the thing that you're calibrating the present behavior to, right? So as an example of meta realism, I mentioned I give the example of the tone box in the Barbarella that they did in the 1960s with Jane Fonda. I think they actually did it in 3 languages. I think Italian, French, and English. And the guy comes in, he's a hirsute guy, and he's like speaking alien, and he does, and Jane Fonda goes, "Oh, I'll just adjust my tongue box," and he goes, and he puts his fingers to his lips and speaks English. And to me, it's like, that is it. They have just acknowledged. Now I might be reading into it. But that, when you put your fingers to the lips, to me, again, I think I'm reading into it, but it's a reasonable assumption to say the Tum box is physically making him speak English.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what we pretend in all these sci-fi shows is that, oh, it's overlaying it in English, and no one ever says their lips are moving in English.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it should be like watching a Japanese movie that's been overdubbed. If you're going to do it.
Yeah. When you say that, it makes me think of Helen Keller. You know, the whole thing with her learning how to read. And then she actually, because she was blind and she was deaf, and not learning how to read, learning how to speak. And I remember she learns between a combination of things, but one of the things that
dactylography. I think
one of the things that I don't know if the caregiver, the woman that taught her, takes her to a well and puts water on her hand and then spells it in her hand and then also does this.
Right.
You know, when you say that, I'm thinking, so yeah, I think you're probably right, because there was something, what she was trying to do was connect what I'm spelling and what I'm saying to this stuff that you're feeling.
I just imagine like these deaf people when they're watching a science fiction show, and it's like these humanoid aliens come on, and it's like I can lip read them because obviously if you're especially in television, like it's going to be a big ask to get people right. You're going to have to act this in Alien, and then we're going to overdub it in English just for the sake of the fact that your lips should be moving in Alien.
In English, right?
So as for the other characters. So, what did you think of Gordon Bennett? Oh, I changed his name from Gordon Bennett to Gordon Bennett.
Let's see. Do I have anything on Gordon? Oh, Gordon is her love interest / what do you call it? Producer that helps her get public. Yeah. He served his purpose. You know, he wasn't it. Yeah, I would say he served his purpose for her. You know, I feel like he sold her out too. He kind of annoyed me that he didn't stand up. You know, I think it was quick for him, but I guess in his mind, hey babe, if we get through this, then we can do what we want. But this was her baby. So
yeah. And then like there's a bit of an NTP kind of like she says, I'll take Ben back, just drops him like a stone, sort of thing. A bit of that, a bit of the ENTP stuff in there for Wilma. They're sort of keeping it real.
Keeping it real. That's how I got this. Yeah. That's because Wilma's got it like that. She didn't know how fabulous she was.
Yeah, but there's also the bit
that's
where
what she says. She says
what I've added in the second version is like him saying things that are a little bit more off and sort of like having Wilma's reactions to it, and so it's like she's letting stuff slide that she doesn't let slide with anybody else.
Yeah, well, that's because she's pragmatic.
Yeah,
she's consciously letting it slide. It didn't go by her as much as it. Okay, that's a 1 in my book. You know, there's going to be so when I'm ready to get rid of you, Bubba, I'm going to have a whole lovely list.
Yeah, so it's just like basically using Gordon. Because she finds him hot and she finds him useful.
She finds him useful. That's the only thing. Like I said, that was what he was a means to an end. I love the way that you. What was his not what you called him? You didn't say Miss Big.
Big name.
Big name. Did you ever watch Sex and the City?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's a character in there, Mr. Big.
Right.
And that was the name of one of the boyfriends in the show, and we never find out what his name is until the very, very end when she's getting married. Like 6 seasons, and we never knew his name. She referred to him as Big, and I thought that was really. I was going to say that was that. I thought Big Name was funny. I thought that was a good use of that. Especially how you've repackaged some of the names.
Yeah, because then he tries to pronounce the name. He tries to pronounce it. Yeah,
Big Name. That works. Big Name works.
So I changed a few of his what did you think about the bits where he got his idioms wrong? and it would say things like, I see the caterpillar has turned.
Oh, yeah, he got corrected on that though. Let's see.
Oh yes. Do not correct my English idioms.
Yeah.
You do not want to be on the receiving end, on the delivery end of a racially based law jacket.
Yep. Lawsuit. Yeah, that's cute. Basically, law jacket. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that was cute. But yeah, he yeah, big name. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say you can't deal with some. I was gonna say, but you know, the rational is definitely always gonna put you in check anyway.
Yeah. And it's like and then we'll be in the hen house with the studio. I don't care what kind of house we're in, Gordon. It's
yeah,
it's just like silly jokes, but I thought I'll go there. I'll put it in there.
Yeah, those are cute. Well, I was gonna say cute little. I was gonna say they come across as plays on words, but they're cute. But that was cute.
Yeah, and I can imagine somebody getting the idioms wrong. So what did you think of? I think we briefly touched on this. What did you think of Footnote Lady and Volos?
Volos, I love those kinds of characters in shows anyway, because to me, because they speak to us directly, and it makes you feel like you're in on a secret. But I think what was funny was there's a form of Volos all over in several different types of shows. But Footnote Lady was funny because she's sort of like I'm the unsung hero of the book. I offer so much right here at the bottom, and I usually don't even get representation. That's what I thought was funny. I thought that was funny about her. And then some of the things that she says and refers to. If you guys ever do the I was going to think about the playbill. So much of this, I think, would make are you going to do the playbill?
Yeah, I mean, if it was, like the logistics of it are.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to have like a theatre company that has its own theatre. Otherwise, and that's like difficult to find. And I think that it comes to something where making one's own sitcom is easier than staging.
That's true. That's a good point.
I may have been rather over ambitious with the stage show, but I think it is technically possible in the sort of like I've got the staging, like you've seen the back with the staging diagram, and there's enough time for it, but people are going to have to be on their balls of their feet, and it'd be like pretty much staging a movie every time they're doing the play in live action. And so I was thinking that would be impressive from an audience's point of view to actually see a production where they can actually pull it off in terms of, because like I said, there is enough time for the costume changes, and that was the thing that was the trickiest, is like, and that's why I came up with the scenes with Footnote Lady and Volos to give enough room.
Yeah, and I was going to say in Footnote Lady, there's a couple of spots in here where she actually interacts with the other characters in a way that you don't see Volos, like with the policeman.
Oh yes, yes.
So in some ways, she is both a narrator, but then also a little bit more interactive to a certain extent. Well. Like I said, she's got a whole scene here, a little smart aleck.
There's a bit. You've been arrested for implying.
Yeah, she's got it. Yeah.
You can't arrest a footnote. New anti-terror legislation entitles me to do many things I could not do before.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say you can't arrest what you can't catch. Come back, Ms. Patriarchal bastard. Yeah, she's good.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have a line like that from Laura, where she was gonna say something like, she's gonna call them unwoke bastards.
Unwoke. Unwoke. I love it. Oh god. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a bit where I could probably there's something there, and then she says something like the sex toys should be subsidized to make up for female slavery, something like that. And she defines that as like hundreds of years of unpaid work.
Wow. Wow.
So it's like really going like unpaid housework. That's what she says.
Wow. Yeah. And then
Right.
I was gonna say, and then you had a couple of fun little characters that were thrown in here for the humor. The was it 80s? Was it the 80s police? No, was it 80s police officer?
Oh no, it's 80s and fat suit.
80s and fat suit.
They were nicknames that Ben came up with.
80s and fat suit.
For the two bodyguards that were in the section that I cut. Where because they're the ones that throw them out of the Doctor Who convention, and then they meet at the end. Yeah, the
80s. Well, and and it was funny because I was looking at that. I was like, at the description, I was like, yeah, that was 80s. Because in my mind, I was picturing that mullet. Although mullet came more toward the latter part of the 80s, I think, because I want to say probably from the late 80s to the early 90s, you saw a lot of the mullets. Although, let me take that back. There was the pre-mullet. And it was called the Shat.
It was a perm.
Yeah, it was a bit of a perm. Yeah, that was. Yeah, I was going to say depends on which time frame. Another thing too, when it comes to styles and things, the UK was always at least 2 to 3 years ahead of the US in terms of fashion and what was popular. If you look at music videos and things, a lot of what you might see in a 1978, 79, 80s music video, you'll see in the US in 80 and 81.
Right.
And I think that's because you guys have, Francis right there. When, like I said, I used to think it was the other way around. And then as I've gotten older, I realized, oh, no, actually, the UK is typically ahead of us in the States. It takes Now, that's not to say New York or the fashion meccas of the States don't have the high fashion. It's just that in terms of mainstream, you guys are always ahead.
Right. But I remember, to sort of balance that point of view, I remember listening to a radio show on in the 90s, and it was something about New York.
Yeah,
I think they said 5 hours behind, 5 years ahead, and it's like in terms of things that would come to Britain.
Gotcha.
5 years later, but I can't remember what they were because it was a long time ago.
Well, and again, like I said, I think back like the long hair. You had the Beatles had that before we started really doing that in the States. When I remember when we went to Iceland in the 90s, the fashions that we were wearing here, Iceland was ahead of us, and all of the folks that were there from the UK that would go shopping and come over to Iceland. Like I said, the bell bottoms were making a comeback. And then when we came back to the States in the late 90s, like because I think I went there in like 95, 96 time frame, and then came back to Oklahoma, I think it was like 98, 99. So in that frame, they were just getting those same things. And I was like, wow, it's true.
It is.
But it's this fashion. I'm just talking about popular fashion. I'm not talking about the high-end stuff that you see on the runways.
I think also London is ahead of certain other places so it might just be a thing of like those fashion capitals that you get in Europe.
Right.
So what about the section where it got a little bit meta? Where Ben has a press conference, and then Robert McKee is there from Film Realism Monthly.
That was fun. I wrote a comment about it because you sort of allude to that prior to that. The last, well, as long as somebody from such and such did, Film Realism Monthly, doesn't come. And then I was like, oh, you threw that in there. That was a little nugget to let us know. Yeah, that was, and then you modeled him and the other one at, let's see, no, there was another two characters that you modeled after real people, or you wanted them to look like real people.
What is Pete Schiff?
And was it Mary Hart, the Mary Hart character?
Yeah, Mary Hart and Ted Casablanca. Because I used to watch E! News. But Ted Casablanca was on E! News. Mary Hart was on Entertainment Tonight.
Right.
And so I just thought that kind of look from about 2003.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then there's a bit where Ted says, I don't understand what a phenomenal realm paradox is. This stuff's for nerds. I'm out of here.
Yeah. There is I'm just looking for that because I actually made here we go. Yeah, Reason, but Real Magazine is a real magazine, right?
Reason Magazine, yes.
Reason Magazine is a real magazine. I've written up their real magazine because I actually looked that up when I was at Ben Notice's lady from Reason Magazine is amused. Thank you, hot Reason Magazine.
Yeah, I changed
lady.
that. I changed
that.
Oh, you
did change it?
in this post Me Too movement world. Ben's a little bit less forthright, and he says something different. What page is that on?
This is a 101 of this one.
Right, it'll be roughly the same page. In I'll try and get there. In the one on, I'll try and get there. 101. I'll try and get there. Yeah. On the share.
Reason Magazine, and then there was the other one about I was looking for the other reference to the film realism. Yes. Here we go.
So 101. But here we go. Bob McKee.
Yeah. And then on page 99 is where you have film realism monthly.
So Bob McKee. Film realism monthly, Mr. David. Aren't you thoroughly ashamed of yourself?
Yeah, and if you
folks' realism.
See, I put my LOL on that. Like I said, some of the places that you're mentioning, I've got my little notes here. Yeah, film was an LOL. Yeah, and mainly because, and then you go into the third person. It reminded me of Bob Dole. Well, remind me of the caricature of SNL doing Bob Dole because they would always, they imagined that Bob Dole talked to him about himself in this way. You know what I mean? Yeah, I thought that was funny. Yeah.
No harm done,
But film realism, but. Yeah. Reason Magazine is a real one because I looked that one up because there were several of the things that I thought, I said, is that real? And I looked at it, so I have a little note there. Yeah. And
Yep. Let's see what Ben says to the woman from the Reason Magazine.
Yeah, Reason Magazine. Yeah, let's see.
Oh, and then have all the stuff with Wilma just saying, pause! Everything pauses on the stage so that Wilma can have a think.
Everyone freezes apart from Wilma. And then there was one in here where you talk about buying neuroscience of personality.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. I was like, insert gratuitous plug of one of your fabulous Dr. Dario Nardi. I thought that was cool. Yeah.
Right, there we go. Oh, look, I'll go one further. Look at this one on screen. I made a change.
Okay, which one here? Let's see, is that on 103 or 104? Okay, 103.
Well, it's not on yours. It's a new bit that I added.
Okay. Okay. See, Ben Petership now, Ben. You'll have to forgive me. I'm obliged to interpolate some recommendation. Here goes by. Matches orientation of Vander. That's true. Yeah. And then go read Peter Schiff's book, How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. Yeah.
So there was the bit about the Reason Magazine. Right, where's the bit with Reason Magazine lady? I think was earlier. What page?
Reason Magazine is on 101. After the frozen unfreeze. Ben notices the lady from Reason Magazine is amused. Thank you. Hot Reason Magazine.
Right, I'm gonna try and find it. Oh, okay. What I did here. Lovely.
Lovely. Lovely. Oh, that's cute. The Me Too. Yeah. Let's see.
Right. So there was this bit here with the plot hole.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is it right here.
It was cancelled halfway through last night. I went home and read your screenplay.
Right.
This press conference and even I appear. You have to be in your movie.
Aha!
It's like, well, that only makes sense if you're a co-conspirator. So come up here and join me. Right. Okay.
Yep. Well, it's funny because I'm looking back in here. I have because each time I went through, I used a different color, and I have some in pink, some in yellow highlighter, and some in green. And it was funny because I had circled that when I came back to that spot twice. Yeah, even cracks a smile and looks like a co-conspirator. Let's see, neuroscience personality. Let's see. Yeah. I was looking at you mentioned the Thomas Sowell book. from Peter Schiff, apart from having a Tom Selleck haircut, no, also knows. Let's see here.
Right.
Yeah, there.
Did I mention Thomas Sowell?
Yeah, Thomas Sowell is on page 105 of the original book, and that's a Peter Schiff comment.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and then Tashaway, or you say Tash like mustache.
Yeah.
Tashaway 3000. Right. Then
yeah, Thomas Sowell. Yeah. He called him Mister.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep. I love how one of my favorite lines from her, because it sounds like something I would say. She said, "I made like Congress and misappropriated, i.e., or that is, stole his external hard drive." Right. I love my favorite one is reallocated. Well, I didn't. Right. It was reallocated. Yeah.
Yeah, misappropriated.
Misappropriated.
Yeah. So people who know about appropriations committees.
Mm-hmm. There was one line. You know what? Where you talk about the was it nominal?
Yeah, the numinal realm.
Nominal. Okay, and then you go back. I'm sorry. I just can't tell you more. I started to say you should put a capital Kant, but that would be lost. That would be fun in writing. Yeah. Because can't, and never mind.
Yeah. Oh, right, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's bad. Okay, let's see.
Right. Let's see. Let's go back to the. If I go back to the that one. So I think that's the characters. So any other favorite bits?
Well, let's see, because I did have my little notes here.
Yeah, if we go through your notes, yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see.
I'm glad that you thought Wilma was convincingly Southern.
Yeah, she's convinced. Well, especially for the region. Like I said, that's the. I hate to marginalize, because there's complexity in type, there's complexity in geography, but I do think that her directness is very authentically Texan. Like I said, they're the folks that they go big, they go large. That's how they roll. And the other thing too is they're I would say they tend to be a little bit more on the libertarian side, more so than the conservative side.
There's that libertarian with the. Mm-hmm. There is that in Texas. Okay. The
let's see here. Da-da-da.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a little bit about the various styles of humor.
Mm-hmm. And now you asked me, okay, so how did you think the ending was going to go? I will definitely say that the ending surprised me, because I thought that the relationships would end a little bit differently. But I think that, like I said, I mentioned before that I liked the humor that was put in there, and I think that, like I said, it lends itself to the whole story, because even though the character mentions, I'm going to write a rom-com, earlier in the story, it is kind of one, but then again, it's not. It's more, I don't know, a buddy movie or a buddy, again, I don't want to say too much, but yeah, that was a lot that I liked about I liked the ending because of the humor. But then admittedly, I guess I'm, as you would say, slightly FE allergic. So I do tend to prefer humor. Let's see here. The science fiction aspect, I think I mentioned earlier that definitely is something that I think could be explored as a parallel story. I think you have a whole world in and of itself with that. Yeah. But then again, I love Star Trek. I love Next Generation, the original series. I am definitely an Orville fan. So those kinds of worlds are things that I gravitate toward anyway, just in general. And then you've got the sort of superhero aspect to that as well. So, it says you've got that, or not superhero. What was the word that you said that we would use for this?
Superheroics.
Superhero. Oh yeah, superheroics.
Yeah, I was just saying that
Exactly.
because like those, like, and even the costume design that I've come up with for Power Person is completely different because I was thinking about it from, I went to the logic of, okay, why would she wear these? And it's like, okay, it's got to fit it under a costume. She'd probably wear a mask as well. And then there's these other things. So I thought, okay, if we're going to make it different, make it completely different. And then instead of Shira, Sheila.
Warrior Maiden.
They haven't copyrighted it. I've been Warrior Maidens before.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Supergirl to Hyper. Those are great, but you know, those are great because one, there's something that are they're yours, but they benefit from our preconceived ideas of ones that we know that they're like. And so we're going to go, oh, what's that about? Because we like some of those other characters, but they get to be their own people once we get to know. Like I said, again, I've always loved good superhero movies, I should say. But I guess I've always had a little bit of bent on science fiction. So like I said, you've got a great combination of both in a whole other separate
there's
universe.
There's a thing I could do with a certain story, but again, that's down the road. I have to think on about trying to get the sitcom.
Yeah, one of the questions about weak points, one of the reasons that I am glad that you are expanding this is that I think it would be great because it's going to give you an opportunity if you go along with this main story that you've got here to add a little bit more conflict between Rena and Wilma.
Yeah,
I think that that you can play along with that. I also think that some of the like the Justin Bieber like character. I mean, there are a few things that they can play along with that. I think that like I said, there are definitely some fun relationship things that can happen. I think Ben could be exploited to the nth degree. Also, some of one thing that I meant to mention was the lubricant products and the descriptions of those, hilarious. And there's just so many little things in there because Ben is such that horny teenager that I think you can pull so much of that off. But he's also he's a grown man at the same time. You know what I mean? It's like that here's the intellectual artistic side, but then there's that little funny side that we
it's like going for the what they call them, knob gags, I suppose.
But that's part of it. Like I said, that's fun. Changing, some of the stuff that you've changed, changing female dog to witch, I think it's great. Bleep is fun. Bleep is fun especially if it's done consistently, because then people will start looking at bleep as I think that could be an appropriate substitute for, just like we say blinking.
Oh yeah. And also the first time it's used, Wilma's got it on her phone. She says, "What the bleep?" You think, "Oh," and it says, "Oh, thank you for the predictive bleep app."
Yes. Well, and what's cool about that is if I go in here and I try to type a naughty word, it corrects. So it's kind of cool. You know what I mean? It corrects the text. So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so the predictive bleep app. So I'm glad that, because part of me was like, oh, I don't want all these swear words in, and just a sort of tonal thing. It never used to like bother me when I was younger, but it's sort of just like the FI moments.
Yeah. But you know what? When you start thinking about if this is something that you publish directly to YouTube, I saw somebody say on their videos recently that you have to have rated G words for the first so many minutes, or how, I don't know if it's a percentage.
Oh yeah, I've seen it where Tick. I watched a video with Tick, and he said that he couldn't mention in his video that and I'll oblige you if you don't say it. He said that someone had like the word that replaces harikari, as in committed harikari. You couldn't use the word beginning with S because of issues around that. And then there were the same things around. So it's like, because they sort of get picked up automatically.
Yeah.
And so there was one character who was called, he had a name that sounded like a swear word. Oh, yes. So he was called, it was spelt, it's something like Captain, and the surname was Fokin. And when he came to pronounce the word, he called him Captain YouTube Censorship. So I thought that was quite clever.
That's awesome.
I thought that was a good wordplay.
And that's because of artificial intelligence, a lot of it. Because you and I know that if a human was listening to that, they can contextualize, and they also can make it. So I mean, I definitely get it. It's funny because my kids tease me because they, my son said, you're a Gen X mom. You're old. Because he's Gen Z, so I'm like ancient at the Gen X I am. He said, you talk to your remote.
Okay. Right.
And I was going to say, and I articulate for that reason. I say, because if you don't, it doesn't know what you're saying. But
right then, so we've got. What about suggestions for improvements?
Well, I think I might have touched upon it. One thing that I thought about was making sure now that there was one instance where you mentioned about the cost of text messaging. I think that anywhere that there is something about technology, have someone say something that contextualizes it just a little bit. But if only because, and I mentioned this because I was, with our TEDx coaches group, we were reading a book called Story Worthy. And one of the things that the gentleman that wrote the book said that when he tells a story about being in an accident in the 90s. And he said when he got off stage the first time he told it, the kids were like, well, why didn't you just call on your cell phone? And he's like, this was the 90s.
They called it a mobile phone.
Right. And it was like, I was making $15 an hour. I was the richest person in the family. Anyway, in the context of when he retells the story, he says, now you've got to remember this was the 90s.
Yeah.
Back then we didn't. So just little things. And that's only for the technology in the sense that for a younger audience that may not remember that or have no frame of reference. Like I said, with my son, he does not remember the concept of having to save a document. I posted one time on my page, shout out to everybody who saves their documents every 2.3 seconds because they lost that Excel sheet back, 20 years ago. And he types underneath it, I laugh at you in Google Docs. Right. He literally does not know what that's like. And it's like, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I guess he's got a point. Well, so that's why, that's the only thing that I could see. I see that. And then again, the ability to, because of what you're doing, to expand a few more conflicts between the two. I think you build up the tension between them and but just, a few more. And then, like I said, and then you can have a few more little elements, again, if it's longer, some of the.
What I can sort of say is to sort of like finish off with in terms of like, in sort of like the context of the sitcom, Wilmas Housemates would be the conflict with Rena. The conflict with Rena wouldn't be. The problem is it's difficult for me to get conflict between, because I've got a sort of like a rose tinted glasses when it comes to ESFJ. And so it would have to be sort of like extraordinary circumstances for them to. So, for instance, in the play, there's extraordinary circumstances that bring Wilma and Rena into conflict, and then it enables like, and so to do that in a sitcom, that's why I was thinking, because that's not there.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking about changing some of those characterization things about Rena.
Well, let me say this much as someone who works with a disproportionate number of ESFJ people in my industry, so to speak. The one thing that frustrates me personally is that they will often take a sense of moral superiority to the nth degree. And that can be judgmental and critical because there's this feeling that I am empathetic, I'm always doing, and you can feel manipulated because they're giving on their terms, whether you've asked for it or not.
Right. So what I've planned is I've got Kerr Stratford, INTJ, and I do plan to have Rena conflict with Kerr.
Okay. Oh,
Stratford.
Okay. That would be okay. That's good. That's good.
And so the characters I have, so I've got Wilma ENTP, Rena ESFJ, Tamsi INFJ, Jay the Archangel ESTP, and an 8. So Rena's a 2, sexual 2. Wilma's a social 7. Tamsi's a sexual 4. Laura's a 9. So when you add 9 into the mix of ENFP, in terms of like being affected by outside just influences in terms of what they believe, and then other so that's so many like internal contradictions. But again, if you create, and I read something recently that I agree with, that by creating detailed character biography, it gives you something to go back to for plots.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then we've got Tell as ISTJ. Actually, I've got something I can show on screen.
Okay.
So this is just for like the plot threads for the first episode. There might be an option. I don't know if there's an option to make you like that one. That's not right. That's it.
That's it. That's pretty good.
Right. Okay. So these are sort of like the threads, and so that you've got the 4 quadras represented, or you could say I've got each side of a temperament represented. So you've got the alpha quadra of, where is it? The alpha quadra of Wilma. Is that it? Is that alpha quadra? Okay. Is that right? No.
No, that says J.
Gamma. That's the beta. Because it's that's the beta quadra, J and Tamsi.
Okay.
And then under there you've got the gamma quadra. Oh, a little bit of a spoiler there for why we're in the same. Anyway, so I have got the alpha. I've got each half of the quadra and each half of the temperament. So I've got an STP and I've got an ESFP. I've got an SFJ in Rena, an ISTJ in Kerr Stratford upon Avon. Kerr Avon. So a little bit of a, but it's not like totally like Avon in Blake 7. It's just some similarities.
Just a little bit. Right?
It was hardcore, that character. You've not seen Blake 7 yet, but Avon was like proper hardcore. So he's not completely like that. So just a tribute. And then we've got the beta, got the INFJ Tamsi and ESTP. Oh, I'll switch the quadras now. I'll go back to temperament. So idealists, NFP Laura, NFJ INFJ Tamsi, and then rationals, you've got NTP Wilma and NTJ Kerr.
Okay.
So get those And I get I don't quite get all the 16 in terms of like subsequent characters.
But you don't have to.
No, I don't have
all
to.
16.
And
yeah.
But there's other characters along the way. Like there's a character, maybe there's a Barden character who's ESTJ. Like if I ever get to it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
The only one I've not yet got is ISFP. Now, what I've got Pierre Benoit, the after sociologist, and he's he probably calls it, right, is this French intellectual Marxist champagne socialist.
Oh, champagne socialist.
Right. And so I worked in completely decadent. And so I worked in that he has 4 big female bodyguards, and they're all ISFJs. This is because it's very hard to work in an ISFJ character.
Female bodyguards that are ISFJ.
ENTP, because ENTP Pierre Benoit. It's like, even if I just show you a picture of Michel Foucault, he just looks ENTP.
Okay.
Where is it? Is it over here? There it is. I mean, here we go.
Look at him.
Who does he look like? So he is, but he wouldn't be right. That's what we got something. Yeah, and he would like wear sort of a right. Again, he's just ENTP. And he would say like FI polar. He said an FI polar. Here's an example of him being FI polar. There's a bit where it says Foucault's blind spot. Now, apparently he did a document in 1971. He did a debate with Chomsky about, but I just wanted to find a bit that would be an example of FI polar. And there's an example that sort of fits him being ENTP. Here we go. I think this is an example of him being, and Pierre Benoit's not going to be like this, but I think this is an example of FI polar in ENTP. Right, so
let's see, what can we do with your claim that our demand for more serious punishment for recklessness? Phallocentric. Okay. You're implying that certain parts of the body, the sexual parts, are more important than others.
And they're like,
rape
is not the same as a blow in the face and isn't just about physical violence. But it's like someone from an FI polar person coming from a purely logic, you can see how you can get to that certain point. That like someone who's FI polar can get to that place. Plus, I think it what might have been involved is that he was very kinky himself.
Probably so.
Yeah, very. Like, and it's one of the reasons why he died early, and he died of AIDS.
Oh, okay.
Because of his activities. Basically, he led the same lifestyle as Freddie Mercury.
Gotcha.
Right. So, I just thought I'd do a different version of him where he's like the hetero version of Foucault.
Gotcha.
And because the real guy was a bit predatory.
Well, think about it. I mean, this is a man. This is a guy that's got 4 women as his bodyguards. I'm sure they're guarding a lot.
Yeah, but it's like a different kind of character, though. It's like, I mean, he's not really going to be doing much to them when they're like bigger than him, and there's like 4 of them, and they're ISFJs. And so I just thought I could thought that would be, again, atypical role enactment, but I can see it. The protector role.
Right.
An ISFJ bodyguard might be, again, it's better than having an ESTJ bodyguard.
Well, my mother, there are elements of her where she definitely was a bit, I think when you first meet her, you might think ESFJ, but when you really get to know her, was definitely more ISFJ in terms of that nurturing and caring. But she worked for she was one of the security folks for customs, and so that she was one of those follow, when she was living in Bermuda, she was one of those follow the rule, you got to do what's being said and done, but she could do that in a way that maintained your integrity, versus it's like, well, you don't really have a whole lot of choice, this is going to have to be done. You know what I mean? So yeah, I can see that. And I would imagine that when you think of nurses, if that's this typical stereotype of the ISFJ, there's a part of them that has to really kind of, make people follow the rules and do what gets done.
Right.
Again, I'll maintain your integrity, but you are going to do what I tell you.
So this is one of the things with in Model G, like when I did the profile for Rena, I did it in a little bit more depth than the one for Wilma, arguably, although there was sort of more to put in for Wilma's in kind of but in terms of, I added some on the QT, I added some bits about subfunctions when I did the Rena profile. So and so I'm about halfway through the ESFJ profile. It's taking ages with because I've been denying it because of the writing, but once I've done the ESFJ, I could then maybe do a video and to do a whiteboard video with the ESFJ type, and then do the graphics on it. But I've got these long sheets because I'm exploring the subfunctions, and so, like I said, I have 3 versions of all of the functions.
Gotcha.
So again, assertive, creative stroke imaginative, depending on whether it's extroverting or introverting, and then harmonizing. And I think that it picks up things that we see in real life rather than making it up. When I had the normalizing one in there, I was sort of either making it up or duplicating something from the core level. And so then I thought, I don't need the normalizing, I just need those 3. Because the reason why Victor put in normalizing, well, from someone from a Kersey point of view, they would say, oh, the reason you put the normalizing subtype in is because you don't do Kersey temperaments, and that enables you to see guardians. Because anyone who's a guardian, you will classify them as a normalizing subtype.
Gotcha. Oh,
that's how socionics would do it. And if someone, so it's like, because there are subtypes of SLI and LSI. Some of them read like ISTP, some of them read like ISTJ.
Gotcha.
And it's like, it's very tricky and it might explain why I did a video a few months ago on Google Trends. Socionics is going down.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it should be going up. Going down. So it might have something to do with that. It might have something to do, is that it's socionics is difficult to market when you know that it's questionable on a quarter of the types.
Gotcha. Well, so, my bias is Kersey, but
yeah, so I'm the same. It's like, I would say there's lots of good stuff in socionics that really is, but I think people can be misled. It's just that the Kersey stuff is, not only does it work well on its own terms, and like it's just like so much there in reality, and it makes a lot of claims that are falsifiable that we haven't yet falsified, because because it makes so many claims about, oh, if someone's of this temperament, they have all of these other traits, and they tend to do. It's like, whereas socionics, it's for intuitives, it's great. It adds extra stuff like with polar functions and stuff like that, and intertype relations, and romance styles, like what Victor Galan could come up with romance styles that really, you can see the differences between the romance styles of NTP, of say INTP and INTJ, and INFJ and INFP. Like, and say the differences between, if you want to tell the difference, like if you've got somebody, if you're in front of somebody and they think they're saying they're an INFJ and you think there might be an INFP, just ask them, what do they think of ESTP is? Right? And if it's like completely 100% disgusted, then probably INFP. But if they're like mostly disgusted, but like, oh, they've got something to them, it's like, well, I do know the odd one that's good. Like, then you think, INFJ. Because you got to think about the age group of the person and like the kinds of ESTPs that they're interacting with.
That's a good point.
Because I think the mature ESTP, that's really what, and it might just be that the ESTP matures later than the INFJ in terms of being ready for a duality relationship. And of course, not all relationships have to be duality, but it can work if the person is, if like the two people are two halves of the same coin. And what you might say is, you might have a concrete type who's like got a 12-8 preference for sensor, and then the intuitive type who's got like a 12-8 preference for intuiting. I think that goes together better than an extreme. Like I always mention, like if you say if you have the extreme INTJ, like Roan LaPlante, although he is actually in a ESFJ, he's actually in a duality relationship, ESFP, and she was like into socionics. But if you had an extreme INTJ who doesn't know about socionics, and an extreme ESFP like Paris Hilton 20 years ago,
right,
they are not going to be able to understand each other.
Yeah.
But I've seen, like, say, in typology, I've seen, say, Therain, who's done some videos on my channel. Like, he's, like, very much interested in developing his extroverting sensing. And then you've got Emily D, we'll call her. ESFP, runs her own Spanish business, in the music industry, accomplished ESFP, wants to develop her like thinking and intuiting. And so for somebody like that, she's going to be able to understand the NT of the INTJ. But again, it's like if they're too far apart, they're not going to be able to understand each other, because it's like you're asking somebody's B side to understand the other person's A side.
Yeah, it's not a...
And that's going to be a pretty smart ESFJ to understand, say, an INTP's A side, because it's like the INTP is there most of the time, and the ESFJ that doesn't spend that much time on their B side, for them to be able to understand the A side of their jewel, I think they've got to be pretty smart.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. I think all of the statistical correlations on the are on the dichotomies, and it makes sense that there's probably a magical point, like you said. And I think, you know, whether it's a 12, what is it, 8 out of 12, or however it's measured, at least 2/3 to 3/4 being in one direction or the other, but not being 100% or 90 to 100%.
Yeah, or it might be, because it might be that, say, somebody could have, say you had a bar chart. It might not be, and so for instance, someone could have, like, say it was like 12-8, 11-9, and it was just like that. And it was like, but that even though that, say, that other preference is like slightly below, it's still not very good. But you might have somebody else where the gap is bigger, but the second one is, so you might have like a sensing type who's like got a really strong sensing preference. They're also good at intuiting.
Yeah.
And whereas you might have somebody else who's got a strong sensing preference, but like they're intuitive, you know what I mean? It's like the difference.
Oh yeah,
it's like gaps between rich and poor. It's like Margaret Thatcher would say, "Oh, you socialists only care about the size of the gap. You'd rather have people there with that gap than up there with that gap." As long as the gap was smaller, it's like,
as long as the gap is, Well, I definitely, I was going to say, I definitely, I can think of people that I know that many times because we do gel, so to speak. I just initially go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting, but it's a good interruption. Hopefully it's a good
Okay.
interruption.
Yeah.
So Brian May would be an example of someone with an effing good B-side in terms of sensing, because I think he's INTJ. He's got reduced affect display, doesn't smile. He looks like Newton, who is INTJ, I reckon.
He does look like Newton.
And the way he plays the guitar, he's got some extroverted sensing going on there. But he's a doctor of astrophysics.
Yeah.
Brian May. He finished that PhD. So I think there's an example of someone where he's like, his NT is like way up there, and his extroverted sensing might be higher than other people's. But that's to correlate maybe too much. Maybe that's just an Enneagram 5 thing and it's like how narrow it is. Like maybe it's rubbish. Maybe it's rubbish at other extroverted sensing stuff. Yeah. But when it came to mastering the guitar,
put all of his energy.
Like Enneagram 5.
Well, I was going to say,
Jeff said about his dad was a prize-winning bass fisherman, but INTJ. But like, where they concentrate their energies.
But see, that's going to say that's the thing. Now I have an ENTP son who knows how to play a few instruments, and he was in band throughout high school. But I remember the first time that he wanted to there was a thing called Power Tour electric guitar, and it was kind of like it had I think it's the frets, and if you could learn the frets, it would let you quote unquote play the song, and it would light up so that you could learn how to do it. Then he wanted me to get him a regular guitar, and I got him a guitar. And one day he was in there. I said, "Oh, are you listening to music on YouTube?" He shut the computer. Well, he turned the volume down. He said, "It never occurred to you that was me playing?" And I was like, didn't know what to say because it was really good. And I didn't know that he could play that way, but he taught himself. And then by the time he got to band, that was the second instrument. And here more recently, he started playing keyboard, but it was like his creativity. He was able to go in and he would study. He would look at how others do it. He would look at different techniques and he could learn. And that was his thing. But, he was never a party animal. You know what I mean? It's funny. And his idea of partying was video games with his friends. But yeah, I do think that the rational, whatever it is that they decide they're going to learn and hone in on, they will do it. But your typical artisan, for example, they might do it and and their whole body and everything is all in it. It's just a whole different
there are
approach to learning the process.
I see that as because you get that with the accomplished like ENTP, like those that are inventors, but most ENTPs, they're dabblers. They're dabblers. They're dabbling in lots of different things.
Yeah. Well, now, mind you, when it comes to home, my son did my floors in here, and he's done, he learns how to do something to do it, and then he will go on to the next house building kind of thing. I'd never call him a crafter, but he plays one.
But that's the thing. It's like there's an interesting thing in Model G about and I remember doing it in the video. I did the ENTP video, Model G, and I mentioned there's a thing called there's a beneficiary shift. No, not a beneficiary, a supervisee shift. Where now the supervisee shift for INTP is when we go towards ENFP. And there might be a supervisee shift for ENTP when it goes to the crafter.
Gotcha.
So there might, but again, it depends if you want to. The shifts thing, it depends how much, but it sort of works out. And there's a bit where apparently there's a supervisee shift of INTJ to ESTJ. I don't know if you've ever gone
I can
ESTJ
believe that.
mode.
I can believe
ESTJ
that.
mode.
But you know what? That's true colors too, because I'm a green, gold, orange, blue, which is basically NTJ, STJ. You know what I mean? And then SP, NF. Sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right then. So, Sabrina, it's now midnight.
Oh goodness! Look at that, we did that again. Oh goodness.
So thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, absolutely. I had fun.
I'm going to end the broadcast and talk with Sabrina for a little bit before I go. All right.